Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. This is story about what if Naruto was the son of Senju Tobirama and destroys whoever has done his family wrong. Part 1. Before I start, please do support for more amazing content and comments for part 2. Do consider to subscribe my channel and share my video to your friends and check out the description as well. Let's start the video. Unknown small village. In the bar, Senju Hashirama is an happy man. Not because he ended the First Ninja World War by signing a treaty peace between the Shinobi Godaikoku, 5 great shinobi nations, at the first Gakage Kaiden, 5 Kage Summit. After all, he is a man that always strived for peace, not because he has a beautiful wife and somewhat a good life. No, right now the reason for his happiness lies on the man several tables in front of him. You ask who and why, and to answer those questions is easy. Flashback, 15 minutes ago, Senju Tobirama is an unhappy man. After the first ever Ninja World War, that ended last week, he's been a little depressed since he knows very well that his brother is dying. He probably has this next 2-3 months and goodbye. All of this because of that bastard Uchiha that gave him more wounds that the medics or even his body enhanced with Senjutsu chakra could heal. Blasphemy, thought the youngest Senju brother. Of course, he still maintains his all-stoic attitude, but when it comes to family it's always difficult to ignore, especially when it's about his loud, idiotic, stupid brother. But still brother nonetheless. He's interrupted from his brooding by someone sitting in front of him. Excuse me for interrupting your brood thoughts, but I thought you would need some break. After all, everyone's partying and celebrating and you are here doing nothing but drinking. Care to enlighten me? Asked a curious long black-haired, pale-skinned with charcoal eyes, woman that looked to be on her earlier 20s. He was on his late 20s. Oh? Not too many people has your courage to just boldly sit in front of me. I wonder if perhaps it is stupidity, since I can tell by your large reserves and your unique chakra signature that you're not from where I came from. Even though we're currently at peace, it still can be dangerous wandering around. So, who are you? Asked the stoic white-haired, having used his sensor abilities and detecting both Suiton and Futon affinities that seemed to be able to merge with each other. Could she be from that troublesome clan? And if so, what is she doing here so far away, was his thought. Mara Yuki, as you probably already guessed. And yes, I agree with you about the dangerous thing, but still, I've been traveling for some time already, and although I trust my abilities to keep me safe, I'm not really looking for trouble. Just settle down, answered, noting the way he spoke the world peace and narrowing her eyes at that, but let go and finishing her statement a little embarrassed. The next few minutes went along by asking few questions to each other, drinking sake, and neither realizing how good it felt talking to each other nor the fact that they were being watched by the Shinobi no Kami. Flashback end. So Tobirama-kun, what are you planning to do? Curiosity in her tone and not noticing her slip, probably due to being a little drunk. If he noticed the slip, he didn't show it, remaining all stoic during their conversation, although sometimes cracking a small smile. He answered the beauty. I'm going back to the village tomorrow. My brother is probably standing down as a Hokage, and I'll take his position. Keep training my genins and passing down my will to someone trustworthy, I guess that's it. You could tell by his tone that he was a little crestfallen by something. You're not planning to have a family? She did notice the slight twitch on his lips after the last word and realized why he got a little sad after his last statement. Well, I do have my village. They are my family, answered, albeit a little weak, and you could tell he was uncomfortable talking about this topic. So, what do you say if I want to go with you to live in your village? Time skip, 20 years, Tobirama 50Y, Mara 43Y. Senju Tobirama and Senju Yuki Mara could tell that these last 20 years have been literally nuts with ups and downs. Even though it took 3 years for Tobirama to grow a pair of balls and ask Mara if she wanted, secretly, marry with him, he still has done it. Only a few close friends of Tobirama knew of this marriage, so they could be counted by one hand. As he predicted, 3 months after he got to know Mara, Senju Hashirama, his brother, died due to chakra poison and his late wounds from the historical battle with Uchiha Madara, plus the newest ones acquired on the last war, thus leading him to be the next Hokage, the Naidame Hokage, after the First Shinobi World War ended with an armistice treaty, but also left the 5 great shinobi countries seriously wounded, though this treaty only led to a period of peace. But after about 20 years, the economic disparity between the countries had become a serious problem. The nations began to form factions, and under the pretext of expending fair rights, the countries started using military force to expand their territories. Thus, the first signs of war has started. Tobirama's reign as Hokage included helping Konoha's shinobi transition from valuing their clan above all else to valuing the village and everyone in it. To this end, he created such institutions as the Academy, the Umbu, and the Chunin exams. While largely successful, enough that other villages adopted the same organizations, the Uchiha resisted the loss of their autonomy. Already wary of the Uchiha because of his history with Uchiha Madara, Tobirama created the Konoha military police force for the Uchiha to run, publicly as a sign of trust but primarily so that the Uchiha could focus their energies into something beneficial. Others, however, would come to see this as a way to marginalize the clan. No, there probably won't be Uchiha massacre, and they will be redeemed. During the last years, Mara tried to conceive a child but never happened, getting frustrated because was her dream since she met Tobirama. Tobirama also got a little upset, not at Mara but at the council, mainly the civilian council that was formed to run most of the errands from the civilian side of the village. They were always arguing to put him under CRA law that his brother created since the Senju Ikizoku was getting low on numbers because of the last war and the last skirmishes in the last years with the other nations, but he's always refusing it since he only has one love only, even though it's against his values for the village. That village is above all. But he just can't, and he doesn't want to tell them about being betrothed to Yukimara, a woman that is not originally from Konohagakure. What he didn't know was that his wife would give the first pregnant signs tomorrow. Time skip, 9 months later, Tobirama's hideout close to Konohagakure. Senju Tobirama didn't know what or how to feel. His baby, his son, he is finally born. He was going through so many emotions that he thought was going to faint, and that he did. Senju Tobirama fainted. Hilarious. Flashback. Senju compound. Tobi Koi, I'm pregnant. Tears falling from her eyes already. She couldn't believe it. She was already starting to think that she couldn't conceive a child and was losing hope. And now this. I think I should try AG. A blue flash was the only signal she had after she got lifted by Tobirama, interrupting her thoughts, who for the first time ever she saw, was crying. But that was a cry of joy, tears of joy. Thank you, Mara-chan, was his only answer. But that was enough for her, as just by looking at his red eyes she could tell how much love was going through them. Flashback end. After a few minutes, Tobirama woke up with a scene that was going to be forever imprinted in his memory. The woman he loved, the woman who gave him everything he could ask for, kissing and hugging with all love and warmth she could muster their child. The child had already a tiny bit of hair, and they could tell that was going to be black, much to the chagrin of Tobirama and the amusing of Mara. But when he opened his eyes for the first time, their breath hitched. Dark, imposing red eyes, same color as Tobirama but same size as Yukimara, which was bigger than the narrowed ones from Tobirama. Pale skin from both of his parents, and the same 3 red line markings, 2 under his eyes and 1 under his chin. They could tell he was going to be quite a catch. So, are we giving the name that Mitone wanted to give in case she had a son with Hashirama Baka? Asked his wife, with a tear falling on her cheek and a grin that was so big that is threatening to split her face. Yes, in honor to Hashine. He would like that. And Mito-chan will probably agree with us. His grin matching that of her wife. Senju Naruto it is then. A child that will rock the world, that will surpass his ancestors, is born. 4 years later, if someone would tell Senju Tobirama that the next 4 years of his life would be a pain in the ass and full of surprises would be an understatement. On the first year after Naruto was born, Senju Tobirama stepped down as Hokage after 21 years of reign, taking everyone by surprise in the village since no one did know his reasons, since the doctor who helped his wife during the childbirth was someone from the old Senju branch family who died 4 years later during the Dainiji Nikai Taisen, Second Shinobi World War. Passing the title to the still young, on his early 20s, Sarutobi Hiruzen, the Sandaime Hokage. Becoming then his part-time advisor, with Shimura Danzo, Tatan Koharu and Midokado Hamura as full-time advisors. He and his family, Mara and Naruto only, were currently living in his hideout, close to Konohagakure, so they could be far away from prying ears, and could mold Naruto into a fine man, strong mind without bad influences from outside, leaving an enhanced Kage Bunshin running whatever he needed in the village. After stepping down, and knowing full well the dangers of the shinobi world, Tobirama started to writing different types of scrolls and notes about everything he knew. Knowledge, history, chakra, jutsus, everything. Unbeknownst to him, his wife was doing the exact same thing. Strong minds think alike, any? On the second year, with the Uzumaki Mito's help, Naruto started his calligraphy. Senju Yukimara taught him how to read, and Senju Tobirama started to molding Naruto's mind to a strong-willed one. Everyone knew that he would need to start earlier because of his responsibilities in the future. On the third year, they kept teaching Senju Naruto the same thing as the last year, but Tobirama introduced him to some small stealth and physic exercises focusing more on his legs so he could a type of body for speed, nothing too exaggerated. Was during this year that the Second Ninja World War started. On the fourth year, Naruto unlocked his chakra, was introduced to the basics of chakra control like the Ha no Baranza no Waza, art of leaf balance, and Kinabori no Waza, art of tree climbing. Flashback. Tobirama's hideout close to Konohagakure. Been 4 long years since their son was born, and they could already tell, with proud, that Naruto was extraordinarily smart, with his calm, stoic and cool posture just like his two-san taught much to the disbelief of Mara. Now I'll have 2 fucking brooders in my house. Oh joy. But today was a special day. Senju Tobirama, Yukimara, Uzumaki Mito and Senju Naruto were in the clearing of their hideout, improving the already created schedule since Naruto has surpassed their expectations, thus leading to this moment. Naruro-kun, today you're going to unlock your chakra. We already explained what is it, so tell me everything you know from your studies. The 54-years-old white-haired man, who looked like he hasn't aged at all, asked his son, who the only reaction he shown was a slight raised eyebrow since this was something that he wanted to try for some time. Hi. Chakra is essential to even the most basic technique. Through various methods, the most common of which is hand seals, chakra can be controlled and manipulated to create an effect that would not be possible otherwise, such as climbing a tree, exhaling a torrent of water, or creating is created when 2 other forms of energy, known collectively as one stamina, are molded together. Shinhai energy, physical energy, is collected from each and every one of the body's cells and can be increased through training, stimulants, and exercise. Seishin energy, spiritual energy, is derived from the mind's consciousness and can be increased through studying, meditation, and experience. These two energies becoming more powerful will in turn make the created chakra more powerful. The youngest one answered without missing a bit, almost reciting his father's book, Becoming a Shinobi, Mind and Body. Good. Now sit down, meditate as I explained you before, take your time, and when you feel the pull, grab it, understood? In a professional tone, which ended with his wife bumping him in the head, Tobirama, chill down or I'll freeze your balls. With a too little sweet smile that sent shivers to both boys' spine and a full grin from Mito. Mom is so scary, Geez/scary woman were both thoughts of Naruto and Tobirama, who now turned his impassive gaze over Naruto. Getting to the point, Naruto crossed his legs, forming the all too familiar Hitsuji, Ram, hand seal, and started to concentrate deeply. 7 minutes later, we could see drops of sweat rolling of Naruto's forehead, who by now got into trance-like, and seconds later all went black. Mindscape. Senju Naruto read all history from the Sengoku Jidai, warring period states, until the beginning of the Dainiji Nikai Taisen, Second Shinobi World War, read almost everything there was about knowledge of chakra, but he heard of mindscapes like this one he's in. His mindscape is full of ice. Mountains of ice. And surprise, surprise, it's snowing. Folding his arms over his chest, he raised an eyebrow as his mind began racing several miles a minute trying to come up with an explanation. This was an habit he got from hearing stories of Uchiha Madara dancing with Hashiramajiji from Mitobachan, and in his opinion was pretty cool, especially when he calls a dance his battles, not that he would say it in front of his Tusan. Everyone knows how much Tobirama loves Madara. I know how supposedly the mindscapes are, but none of the descriptions fits like this one. Is it perhaps because of my mother's Kekei Genkai? No, she never said anything about it. So what is it? And what is this power I can sense up there in the mountains? Even though I can tell it's not chakra, but some kind of energy. At age of 3, Tobirama discovered that Naruto had inherited his amazing sensory abilities, which is a very good thing since there's not many people who can claim to be a better sensor than Tobirama except, maybe, Uzumaki Mito. But that was mainly thanks to the Kyuubi. That's not a bad analysis for one so little. Perhaps the most interesting thing is that you being able to come this deep in your mindscape where I'm sealed. But I can see that it's still too early for you to learn and hear my name, and use me to my full capacities, but you've got the potential. Your potential far surpasses my first and last wielder. A booming voice could be heard from all around him. He still couldn't pinpoint his location since this is not chakra, but still he kept his future-to-be-famous stoic face, raising the already high eyebrow even higher. Wielder, huh? So I can take a guess and tell that you're a sword? Yes and no. I'm a Zanpakuto. I'll tell you more about it when you can hear my name, which is, don't worry if you can't hear it. I'd expect nothing more since you're still too young, as I said before. Basically you can say that I'm a spirit manifestation, and when the time comes and you get to hear my name, you'll become my master. I'll teach you everything I taught the last wielder, and the power that comes with it as well as responsibilities. But until then, grow up and train. I'll be waiting. First step is to unlock your chakra. Hope to see you again in a few years, young Naruto. The voice grows weaker and weaker until everything becomes black again. As he was getting frustrated because nothing was happening, he felt it. That was the pull thingy his father told him about. A cold, massive and thick energy. He used all of his strength to pull it outside. Only 1 minute has passed since his mind went into a state of trance. The Senju/Uzumaki family are stoically, nervously and hopefully looking at Naruto. They are interrupted from their thoughts when all their senses skyrocketed and the area around them becomes cold, and all of a sudden a dark blue thick chakra explodes from within Naruto, now visible to the naked eye, cracking the floor where he was standing. It was so powerful that if it was not for all the barriers that Mito and Tobirama craved all around the hideout, everyone in the village would have sensed, sensor or not. That was just how powerful it was. And if the faces of the 3 people standing there were any indication, they were just as surprised. What a massive chakra, it's like Hashine. No, it far surpasses when he was his age. Thought Tobirama. What a monster! Never thought of him having this chakra so dense, being only half-blooded Senju. I think it's as dense or even denser as Kushi-chan's. He will go far. Thought Uzumaki Mito with a full-blown grin. I'm so proud of you, Naru-chan. The thought of a happy mother, who was puffing her chest with pride. 5 minutes later of releasing his chakra, and after being told to stop, there was only one thought after fainting due to chakra exhaustion, with a smile on his face. First step done. 10 years later, Kanahigaku no Sato. It's been 13 long years for Sarutobi Hiruzen, now 45 years old, as the Sandaime Hokage, the new dubbed shinobi no kami because of his ninjutsu's prowess showed during the 11 years of war that finally was over, winning in various fronts against Kumogakure and Sunagakure, where he came close to killing the Nidaime Kazekage if not for his peace-willed mind. Though 2 years later, the same man died because of his wounds and age that could not support the injuries. Even though the war had been a little bit weird in the first 4 years because there had not been any major battle, but on the 5th year, word spread around the world that the Nidaime Mizukage, Genjetsu Hozuki, with 300 Kirigakyu shinobis, had been killed in combat but not before taking with him a full platoon of 700 Iwagakyu shinobis and the retired knight-aimed Tsuchikage. Yuan Iwa tried to take over Nami no Kuni so they could get the fine merchandise and minerals that came from that small town. 3 days later the Sandaime Mizukage, Gento Hozuki, OOC, was elected. On his 10th year as Hokage, the whole world was shaken by the death of the infamous and arguably one of the strongest shinobis of all time Knight-aimed Hokage, Senju Tobirama, and the Knight-aimed Reikage R. After moving over to the battlefield for the first time in this war, like Senju Hashirama before him, Tobirama tried to foster good relations with the other villages to try and turn the tides of the war. He planned an alliance between Konohagakure and Kumogakure, but during a formal ceremony he and the Knight-aimed Reikage were attacked by the Kinjin Kyodai, Gold and Silver brothers, and left near death. After recovered or so they said, Team Tobirama except Sarutobi Hiruzen, as well as Senju Tima, OOC, Tsunade's mother, Danzo Shimura, Torafu Akimichi, and Kagami Uchiha found themselves surrounded by Kumo's Kinkaku force. With no way for all of them to escape, Tobirama along with Tima volunteered to act as a decoy in place of Danzo, and being both killed by Kinkaku and 20 Kumogakure's ANBU. With his last effort he sent a gift and his legacy to the person he loves the most, and knows that will make good use of it. And like that 2 of the 4 last members of Senju Ikizoku were killed leaving only the Senju brothers, Nawaki and Tsunade, or so they thought. Flashback. In the middle of one of the many craters and puddles of water lies one of the last Senju living. Senju Tobirama with his armor all battered, blood dripping off of his many wounds, in front of by an equal gravelly but not fatal wounded Kinkaku. Senju Tobirama, Owarada. A boisterous tone resounded in front of him, as he knew that he would end the famous Suijin, god of water, today and claim his head and body for experiments since he would have tons of secrets, for the good of Kumogakure in case he wanted to go back to that pathetic village. Not by your hands. As with his still more than enough reserves creates a Kage Bunshin whom Kinkaku notices slipping a scroll and sealing something that he didn't see in time and in a blue flash, Hirishin it away. Kinkaku gritting his teeth runs with the little power he still had to finish the original off who seeing that his clone has done its job, struggles to get to his feet and watching the slow shinobi on his way, with 3-handed seals pushes the rest of his chakra into his body has strange black signs becomes visible to the naked eye, finally leaving the 2 people he loved the most with all his life with a tear dropping from his eye. Farewell, Mara-chan Naruto-kun, I'm really proud to be your father. Take care of your mother. Yura Shisho Fuin. Reverse 4 symbol sealing. Black markings spreads all around his body and starts to form a black sphere where a few ANBUs that survived were drawn in and sealed. Kinkaku that was still running but after seeing the black markings on his body fleed away with the last reserves he had, spotting 3 ANBUs escaping as well, enhancing his feet with chakra and leaping out of there, gritting his teeth in frustration for not getting the body who probably had a treasure of secrets. Oh well, that was the end of the Senju Tobirama, 61 years old, the Knight-aimed Hokage, the Suijin. But his most proud title if he had to choose would be father. Many people though that never again the world would see such legend walking on earth. Oh, how naive they were. Present time, Tobirama's hideout close to Konohagakure. At the same time, as Tobirama's self-destruction ceiling was forming, a blue flash caught the attention of an 11 years old, with spiky black hair with 2 bangs framing his face, dark red eyes, pale skin with 3 red line markings, 2 under his eyes, and 1 on his chin, very good and dedicated physical build for an 8 years old with an impressive 5 feet 1 inch feet, quite tall for his age. He wore a light blue armor with a distinctive white fur collar over a simple black suit. This armor was constructed from numerous metal plates, formed into multiple protective guards along his body. Beneath his shoulder armor he wore 2 bands on each arm. Tobirama's outfit but a lighter blue shade. After canceling whatever he was doing involving one of his affinities, he runs to the clearing where he has seen and sensed even for a split of a second his father's chakra. When he finally got there, what he saw made his legs tremble and seconds later fall to his knees where tears were threatening to fall down his cheeks. Lying there was a simple scroll. But that scroll held a meaning that he would never thought coming, at least not so soon. He picked himself up, stuffing the scroll in one of his many pockets. With tears falling out of his eyes, he tilted his head up to the sky and released a mighty scream to the heavens, and 3 seconds later an explosion of chakra that cracked the earth where he was standing as he kept screaming and screaming. 30 seconds later he had frozen the grass field around him up to 0.5 miles as multiple ice spikes were thrusted into several trees as well. Nothing did escape. The last thing he saw and thought was 2 mops of black and red hair before everything went black. Watch over me from heaven, father. Flashback end. When an ANBU came to his office reporting about his sensei, he had shed a tear. And 3 days later there was a funeral in the village where every single person had cried as well for someone who gave his all for the good of the village. Well, everyone except the old generation of the Uchiha Ikizoku. On that day, there was a shadow who watched everything and prayed for the one who fell. He stayed there and went unnoticed to everyone except for a red-haired Uzumaki Mito and a black-haired Yuki Mara. No one knows that Tobi and Mara were a couple except for Mito. Mara still spent some 20 years inside the village and no one knows about her origins except again for Mito. On the 12th year of his reign, Konohagakure no Sato had many rising stars and feared shinobis, becoming the most powerful village out of the 5. Hataki Tsukumo, 25 years old, has made himself famous in the current war by his amazing and deadly techniques with his sword as well as his right-gun jutsus, winning a spot on the bingo book, S-ranked, the Konoha Shiroi Kiba after infiltrating in the borders of Sunagakure and killing the parents of a soon-to-be master of Kagutsu no Jutsu, Akasuna no Sasori. Jiraiya, 24 years old, one of 3 students of Sarutobi Hiruzen, the dead last that went from 8 to 80 in terms of skill, has gained the Toad summoning contract in the middle of the war. He's one of the keys to win the war. Gained a spot in the bingo book, S-rank, approach with caution, as the Gama Sanin. Orochimaru, 24 years old, second student of Hiruzen, the genius of his generation, the prodigy of ninjutsu, with a sadistic attitude, has gained the snake summoning contract in the middle of the war. Gained a spot in the bingo book, S-rank, approach with caution, as the Hibi Sanin. Senju Tsunade, 24 years old, last member of Team 7 as well as the last from the Senju Ikizoku. Her medical prowess was one of the keys to win the war, mainly against Chio of Sunagakure and her deadly poisons. Lost her mother Senju Toma and her uncle Senju Tobirama during the war. Gained the spot in the bingo book, approach with extreme caution, as the Namakuji Sanin. These last 3 earning the title of Densetsu no Sanin, for fighting and surviving someone who many believes to be a god, Sansho no Hanzo. Many rising stars during the war went through the ranks quickly and earned titles for themselves and becoming famous in Konohagakure no Sato, and all around the world for their skills and teamwork. The legendary formation of Eino, Shika, Cho, Yamanaka Inoichi, Nara Shikaku and Akimichi Choza, 16y old. The amazing display of teamwork earned them many praises from all the villagers. Uchiha Mikoto, 15 years old, the heiress to the famous Uchiha Ikizoka, being one of the most skilled Kunoichis the clan has ever produced. The Hai no Megami and Uchiha Fugaku, albeit skilled, he has tons of arrogance and is always boisterous about his Sharingan. Uzumaki Kushina, 15 years old, the heiress of the deadliest Fuinjutsu and Kenjutsu masters Uzumaki Ikizoku, the second Kyubi no Jinchuriki, replacing Uzumaki Mito who died a few years ago. Because of her hot temper, her red hair, she became known as Chishio no Habanero. And finally, Namikaze Minato, 16 years old. To many he's the prodigy of prodigies. Known for his well-worked speed, Futon Jutsus and his prowess in Fuinjutsu after acquiring knowledge from Uzumaki Mito. I know, recently becoming the newest apprentice of Jiraiya. The greatest prodigy was yet to arrive. Tobirama's hideout close to Konohagakure. After Senju Naruto unlocked his chakra, and getting over of all the surprising looks that his family gave him, he trained his ass off for the next 10 years for the hard life of a shinobi. During those years he learned many things, from jutsus to cooking. Well, the last one was really Mito-bachan's initiative with her sweet smile, yeah. But the best part was learning about element affinities, Suetun, Futon and Raitun. Plus a Kekai Genkai for Hayatun that he unlocked in a moment of rage. The best part of everything was the potential for each affinity. Oh boy. I still can remember how Toussaint was jumping in joy when I draw water from the moisture in the air. Was the thought of the now recently made 14 years old spiky black-haired boy, 2 bangs framing the sides of his face, hitting the growth spurt where he's now 5 feet 4 inches tall, just like his father, with the same angular face, same markings and same dark red imposing eyes. His outfit was the same as his father but a shade lighter blue. At his side there was a dark blue hilt, that appears to be humming and generate lightning whenever he touches it. His father's legacy. He kept training, but after his father's death, the world around him shattered and for the first time in many years he showed more emotions than in all his years together. If it wasn't for his Kasan and Bachan he would lose it. The only positive thing that happened at all during his rage of emotions was unlocking his Kekkei Genkai. The next years came fast, he mastered almost everything his father left behind, created a many others, until the time came to go back to Konohagakure. His father's greatest legacy. He doesn't want to be Hokage like his father was, but wants to protect it, bring peace to this horrible and dirty world and finally, settle down and have a big family. That was his dream, and tomorrow is the day that he would go back to start his dream. Tomorrow will be the day that Konoha no Hyoga, Night Aim Suijin and many more titles to come would be revealed to the world. Konohagakure no Sato. At the gates, 2 shadows can be seen getting closer to the gates where 2 guard keepers are standing. Hidden in the trees nearby the post are 2 squads of A and B ready for any intruders. It's been only 7 months since the war ended, but still, no one can let their guard down even for a second or the next moment would have it to your throat slit. Look Naruchan, the village is right there, said a 64-years-old woman, though she looks like that she's still in her 40s. Senju Yukimura has aged though her attitude or personality still remains almost the same. After her husband's death she had to hold on to her son, she couldn't take it if she was alone. Retired from shinobi activities since the last 5 years, she's dedicating the rest of her life to her son, to be her best supporter because she knows how ruthless this world can be. Now, looking at the village she hopes that her husband's student can still somehow remember her, and that he believes in her and her son. It seems like. The stoic Senju answered and narrowing his dark red eyes to some trees in the distance, already detecting 2 squads on guard at the gates. Mara frowned slightly at his short and stoic response, and hits him in the head, gaining an apologetic look from Naruto. Halt! Who are you and what do you wish that you had to come to this village? One of the 2 guards asked, narrowing his eyes at both foreigners. The young man was about to answer, but his mother beat him into it. We wish to see Hokage-sama. Just pass what I'm about to say to him, and it will be all right. The ice that froze the water monster has left its puddle in a tone somewhat hopeful. Tensing has both ANBU squads left their hidden spots and were surrounding them. One of the ANBU that seemed to be the captain answered in a monotone voice. Very well, give us a minute. 1 second later he vanished, only to reappear 10 seconds later and walking forward in their direction. He said to bring you both to his office. Hope you can travel by Shunshin. Started the captain, only to finish in a mocking tone. But before he could grab anyone's shoulder they vanished in a sky blue flash, leaving 2 squads of ANBU and 2 guards' eyes widened in shock. That was pure speed. Hokage's office. Sarutobi Hiruzen is having a bad day. With the end of the war, the sheer size of the paperwork seems to have quadrupled. Damn you, Tobirama-sensei. He's cut from his murderous thoughts by a plume of smoke in the middle of his office, where a second later one of the ANBUs who's guarding the gates appear kneeling in front of him. Hokage-sama, there's an elder woman and a young boy in the gates wishing to speak to you. They said to tell you something and you would know what to do, the ANBU leader stated. So what are you waiting for? Narrowing his eyes at that, his mind working 100 miles per minute. Who might they be? Is it them? Hi. The ice that froze the water monster has left its puddle. Well, basically it means that Marayuki, ice, being a Hayaton user, froze, got together with Tobirama, water monster, and left its hideout, puddle because it's Tobirama's hideout, and him being a master of water, you get it right? This is a kind of code. A slight widening in his eyes was the only reaction he shown before going back to his poker face, after narrowing again. Send them in. Hi. No more than 5 seconds later, there's a knock on his door. Come in. After the door opens, there's a tall young man, blonde hair with 2 bangs, ice blue eyes, a red-haired with a pair of purple eyes and a long black-haired with a pair of charcoal eyes, with them a tall and well-built man in adulthood with fair skin. He had waist-length, spiky white hair that he usually ties back into a ponytail, with 2 shoulder-length bangs framing his face. Entering the room, standing in front of the shinobi no kami. This were Jiraiya, Namikaze Minato, Uzumaki Kushina, Uchiha Mikoto. Former Team 10. Yo, sensei. What do you need? I still need to do some research. He a perverse grin threatening to split his face. A second later 2 large lumps on his head following a scream of pain. A chuckle is the only reaction from the Sandane. Erosenin, if I catch you again peeping in the hot springs I'll castrate you, Tebane. I'll be glad to help you, Kushi-chan. You don't even take into consideration of we being together again. Sai-sensei, you never learn. They are interrupted from their antics by a blue flash standing in front of them with their back to them, where the only thing they can see is a spiked black-haired tall young man and his sky blue armor, and a short old woman with a dark blue kimono. Good afternoon, Sara-chan. Been a long time, hasn't it? You got old for sure. Widening his eyes in shock for a second, the violent twitch on his eyebrows was the only reaction she got from him. Looking from the woman to the young man, his jaws drops on the floor. He just looks like Tobirama-sensei if not for his hair color, and his eyes that are bigger. Ahem, Marasama, these years been good on you, I can tell. And who might this young man be? A stoic face, no emotions whatsoever was his reaction, followed by a monotone voice. Senju Naruto, Hokage-sama. Eyes widening in shock, jaws on the floor, Minato, Kushina, Mikoto and Jiraiya in a flash are standing on the side of their Hokage looking at the 2 people in front of them. Followed by 2 huge blushes from the girls that went unnoticed by everyone except Naruto, Mara, Jiraiya and Hiruzen. The last 3 grinned in response. Wow, he's so hot, Tebane, you know who. Damn, thank God that Kushi-chan said that she was going for Minato-kun, followed by a giggle. I am possible, but from Hokage-sama / Sarutobi-sensei he's telling the truth. They are just similar, even the outfit were Jiraiya and Minato's thoughts. 1 minute later, getting over his shock, the Hokage addresses them. I've been waiting for both of you. I believe the training went fine if you're here. So tell me about what rank would you give to yourself? If you're anything like Tobirama-sensei you will not tell me your abilities. He always said that deception is the greatest weapon. Hi. Since I'm new in this village, I wish to be in a genin team since I want to form some bonds, and I believe that the Chunin exams are close, so I guess I'll tell you my answer to that later on. Replied the 14 years old, with the same monotone voice. A smile was his first response from the old man, and was about to answer when he was interrupted by Jiraiya. Sarutobi-sensei, I think he would do great if he becomes my apprentice along with Minato-kun. No. I've got the perfect sensei for him. He said he didn't want any team, so I guess I'll give him an apprentice. And everything you heard here is an S-rank secret punishable by death. Understood? Seeing the frowns from everyone, the former Team 10 thus finishing with little killer intent that made them nod. Good, now I believe that you can still enter the Senju compound and live there. I just want you to fill up some files and you can go. Be at the training grounds number 3 by 9 a.m. tomorrow. This is for you, young Naruto finished and throwing a high tie to Naruto, who caught easily and set it on his forehead. Thank you, Hokage-sama, I'll be there. My Kasen will fill up the files. I'm going to check the village. As he said that, the room instantly dropped some degrees and his body shattered in blocks of ice. Kori Shunshin. A second later, he vanished, leaving the room shocked except Mara. Hayaton? Were their thoughts. 2 hours later, hidden location root headquarters. A man on his mid-40s can be seen in his office checking some files. Some minutes ago, one of his subordinates reported him that someone claimed to be a Senju has joined our ranks. That fool Hiruzen. Maybe I still could recruit him, that if he's really who he claims to be. I shall lay down for now and observe him. Shimura Danzo, teammate and rival of Sarutobi Hiruzen, is a man that works in the shadows. After claiming the leadership of Root, an organization of the likes of ANBU, created by the infamous Nidaime Hokage, he started working from the shadows for the good of his village, from assassinations to children's kidnapping for his ANBU. The pieces are falling into place. If that Senju is anything like Tobirama sensei, then the future of Konohagakure is on good hands. 1 day later, Hatake Sakuma was an happy man. After the war came fame, but he never liked the spotlight. Really, why do people get all hyped just because I killed some people? Yes, I was protecting our home, but shouldn't be like that. And now Hokage-sama wants me to apprentice some squirt who doesn't know the horrors of war. Yesterday some ANBU had knocked on his door saying that the Hokage wanted to see him. And well, the following hour was wasted on arguing with the damn old man because he wanted him to apprentice some new boy that joined the Konoha's ranks. Oh well, he can just fail him. Training grounds number 3. After Shunshin to the training grounds, Sakuma realized that someone was already there and noticed a young man who looks like was meditating on top of a boulder. With his stealth he got close to him, getting behind him ready for a surprise swing that would knock him out. Sigh, this will be easy. He's letting his guard down already. A second later, the gray-haired man got behind Naruto, who was still with his eyes closed. Letting his hand fall to chop the man's neck, he widened his eyes in shock when all of his body was unable to move. Senji Yuki Naruto was meditating in the middle of the training ground where he would meet his new sensei. Meditation became something he often does to keep his mind calm and working on steadying his massive chakra reserves. His senses had already picked up a chakra signature, where he could tell were very large. Not bad, he thought. He could already tell that he had an affinity to Raiton and Doton and a very minor to Katon. He's probably working on a new affinity. He's very strong. He already knew what he was doing, trying to catch him off guard, but even his father could barely get behind him without him knowing, and he was only 7 at the time. Well, time for a surprise. He's underestimating me. He scoffed at that last thought, stealthily gathering the moisture in the air above him. A second later, several sharp whips of water emerged from an orb of water that had formed, immobilizing Sakumo's hands and legs, who were very close to his neck. Inu, Hitsuji, Suetun, Suryuban. Water style, water dragon whip. A second later, a kunai was placed on Sakumo's neck, who still had his eyes widened. Getting over it, he started chuckling while his thoughts were going miles a minute. He created that from the moisture in the air. His control on Suetun is already on Tobirama-sama's level. Very good, young man, never let your guard do. He was cut out of his musing when the same kunai slitted his throat, where a second later the same person turned into mud. Down, that's one of the shinobi rules. So you saw through my Doton Kage Bunshin, huh? Not bad. Mused a voice several meters behind him, who was finishing already his hand signs, inhaling a great amount of air, putting his hand over his mouth, expelled a medium fireball in Naruto's direction at great speed. Katon, Gakakyu no Jutsu, HN, scoffed the dark red-eyed man, clapping his hands together, molding chakra around him with the moisture in the air and the puddles left from the wisps. Water exploded all around him, protecting him from the fire, forming a wall. Suetun, Sujin Hiki. Using his amazing sensor abilities to keep Sakumo's chakra pinpointed, he formed another hand seal. Inu, Suetun, Suryuden. The water wall started to emerge together, and took shape of a monstrous dragon with glowing yellow eyes. Went straight after Sakumo, who was still wondering what the hell this guy ate for breakfast. If he was gaping at this, the next thing left him with his jaws on the floor. Raiton Kangekiha. Electricity exploded from his hands, emerging with the water dragon, increasing his damage tenfold, going at amazing speeds in Sakumo's direction, who, getting over the shock, quickly grabbed a tanto behind his back, getting narrowed eyes from Naruto because he knew what that was. The infamous Hako Chakura, to almost as famous as Raiji no Ken, extending his chakra through the blade, with a swift and gracious swing. Where only a flash of white was visible throughout the incoming jutsu, an explosion of water was the only signal that Naruto had of knowing that the dragon was annihilated. Konoha Shiroi Kiba, already moving one of his hands to the tilt on his belt, stopped after the next statement. Oh? So you know me? Thought you'd only recognize the likes of Densetsu no Sanin. Oh well, you pass. I think that's enough. Any more and we will level up the training grounds. He's amazing, he doesn't even need to say the jutsus out loud. Fine, so let's start with introductions. I'm Hatake Sakumo, likes our sleeping dogs, my sword and helping my comrades with anything, dislikes our traitors and ignorant people, My hobbies are sleeping and polishing my sword, and my dream is probably get laid and have a family of my own, I guess. Getting a sweat drop from Naruto because of his nonchalant tone. Fine. My name is Senju Naruto. I like my Kasan, my sword, the nature, cold and training. My dislikes are Kumogakure scums and traitors. My hobbies are creating new jutsus and meditating, and my dream is bring peace to the world after I level up Kumogakure to the ground and make someone proud of me. Narrowing his eyes at the hatred on the Kumogakure words, his mind was racing to figure out this mystery when seconds later his eyes widened at threat to come out of his sockets. This weight on type of level, his armor, that hilt, those markings on his face, could he be? Yes, I see you've figured out. I'm his son. I appreciate if you don't tell anyone, though the secret will come out someday. At least I can have some peace from the fangirls and my future enemies. Both shuddered at the thought of the infamous fangirls. Alright. We'll be training for the next month, and after that get ready because we will getting some missions. Hope you're ready for tour training. With an evil grin on his face, getting a cold run up on Naruto's spine, who was wondering why he was afraid of said cold if he loves it. A month later. Been an interesting month for Senju Naruto. He got to know the remaining family he still had, for example his nephew, who curiously is 16 years older than him, Senju Tsunade, who gave him a few tips about molding his chakra to use on his punches to get his power increased by 100-fold, some aerial ninjutsu, which the young one was truly thankful. That and the fact when she gave him a crushing hug for being so cute he couldn't look at her for the rest of the day, mumbling about crazy blondes and big melons, which got the Tsunade to blush a bit, and a vein popping up from her forehead. Really, it's really a weird relationship. He got to know her little brother as well, Senju Nawaki, who had the exact same personality as Senju Hashirama, but unfortunately not his skills. At least he works hard and is funny to be around. The 20-years-old Jounin is a well-liked man that dreams to someday become Hokage. He got to know both Uzumaki Kushina and Uchiha Mikoto a little more on his spare time, and was at least interesting how different their personalities are, but still great best friends. They loved to try and tease him about how both of them would share him, which got the reaction from the stoic Senju they wanted. Jokes aside, deep down, both of them kinda wanted to do just that, not that they would admit anytime soon. He had a few talks with Namikaze Minato, but being apprenticed by Jiraiya meant that he didn't have too much time, but what he could deduce was that he had a great heart and a good dream. Wanting to become Hokage is always good in his opinion, though the Senju really did want to spar against him, but unfortunately they just didn't have time. The rest of his time was spent with his sensei, Hataki Tsukumo, which each passing day they viewed each other as family, as the eldest of them usually would share some of his history or career as a shinobi, which provided lots of information for the youngest. Their spars would always be a sight to see, even if they didn't go all out, in their opinion, for the good of the village. Smart asses. But today has everything to be an interesting day, since his sensei had to go out of the village to get some soon-to-be uncomfortable information for their Hokage, so he parted ways with the former Team 10 minus Jiraiya and Minato, who were out of the village, and Uchiha Fugaku. Originally this was to be his first mission, but due to importance of the mission and the fact that Hiruzen still didn't have full report from his sensei, he had to go with another team who he completely trusts. 2 weeks off. Oh well, 2 free weeks. Well, about the interesting part is that his summons made an offer which would take his training up a notch. A huge notch if the notes from Hashirama-jiji said about was something to go by. Senjutsu Chakra. The normal stoic Senju almost jumped in joy and basically just wanted to scream at the top of his Tusan on the Hokage's mountain, but he pushed his feelings aside and the only response was a simple fine. And that he would reverse summon himself to get stay the training, which was got him a grunt of acknowledge and a plume of smoke that signaled his exit. Senju Training Grounds. Ainutori Saruhitsuji. Gyakukuchios no Jutsu. A second later Naruto vanishes in a plume of smoke, where in another poof the black-haired reappears for the third time in his life at the mountains where resides his summons. The first time being when he tried the Kuchios no Jutsu without supervision and had disappeared from Tobirama's hideout, and getting the surprise of his life and having the rare chance of signing a summoning contract with the animal or partner that he has the most affinity with. Tenpasuto Samyaka. In a plume of white smoke, Naruto appears standing right in front of the boss and personal summon. You take a good look once again at how huge and beautiful she looks. Magnificent. Above them several different types of birds with different colors seem to be flying without care in the world, but none of them could be compared to the sheer size of their boss. The hawks, pure black in color while having lighter areas along her back and wings along with her tail. This huge hawk also has dark red markings around her orange eyes as well as along the sides of her beak. Her muscled legs and large claws are easily noticeable, giving her an ominous look. Getting over his fascination again, in his normal nonchalant tone, greets her Yogaruga-sama. How have you been? Greetings, Naruto-kun. I've been good, thank you. I presume you're here to start your training on harnessing the Shuriken energy, am I right? Yes, I've been hitching for some more training with you as well. Our combinations can't lose their graciousness. This was another thing. Garuga-ken is an extremely deadly and powerful summon, but the uniqueness about her and the Taka Ikizoku is that they love and demand having gracious in everything. One could say that they are perfectionists. Oh well, at least everyone will get to see some beautiful fireworks, right? I see you're learning our ways, brat. Getting her eyebrows twitch much to her amusing follow me. Meanwhile, I'll explain everything you need to know about the using of Senjutsu Chakra, the limits, the rules, the advantages, the disadvantages, and how to surpass and nullify those. Well, Senjutsu, one must first learn to sense the natural energy in their surroundings and gather it inside their body. It must then be balanced with the user's own physical and spiritual energies, which make up their chakra, to create Senjutsu chakra. If too little natural energy is added to the mix, Senjutsu cannot be used, but gathering too much results in the user turning to stone. In the case of humans, absorbing too much natural energy first causes them to transform into an animal, be it a toad for practitioners at Mount Myaboku, a snake for practitioners at Ryuchi Cave, or in your case, which you can say that you're lucky, an amazing hawk. Getting a big sweat drop from the last sentence and a dry sure as response. Anyways, the process can be reversed if the natural energy is expelled from the person's body before they fully transform, but once the transformation is complete, it becomes permanent. Those who are successful in this training learn to enter a state called Sage Mode, in which their physical parameters and sensing capabilities are dramatically enhanced for as long as the mode is active. I've gathered some information about the other clans from the Summons realm, and there's a person who can actually archive an incomplete version of the Senin Modo, and he too lives in Konoha. So, wait, who has done it? I believe his name was Jiraiya from the Gama Ikizoku, who lives in Mount Myaboku. There is a sacred fountain on Myaboku that produces a special oil which allows people to feel the natural energy around them more easily. But as you say, there are no shortcuts for anything, and if you learn without the help of the likes of oils, which by the way we don't have, you can be truly one with the nature and become the perfect sage, just like your ancestor and uncle, Senju Hashirama. So, are you ready for the task? This will be hard and you'll need loads of patience. Her response was a nod, but if you looked directly into his eyes you could see fire burning through them. Such was the determination. Alright. Sit still. 2 weeks later, Senju training grounds. A plume of smoke out of nowhere exploded in the middle of the training grounds. A small breeze passed by in that exact moment, revealing Senju Naruto on the same sky blue outfit but with an additional of a pure black sleeveless high-collar cloak. In the middle of it you can read the kanji for Taka Senin with what looks like snow falling from the top of the cloak and some thunders in several places. Although he still didn't have completed his training, this was a gift from Garuga for his amazing hard work during the time they were together. Apparently the times runs faster when in the summon realm, so he spent actually more than 2 weeks there. Oh well, no one needs to know. The problem and the gut feeling he had some hours ago is that there was an Hawk messenger that only his mother has access, and it's the first time she's using it, so it must have been something bad. Pinpointing his mother's chakra and getting a surprised look for a split of a second on her location, he vanished in several purple lightning streaks. Right on Shunshin, Hokage office. 4 people who have been talking for over an hour are interrupted from their thoughts when purple lightning streaks formed out of nowhere, quickly emerging together, and a second later a figure who has been out for 2 weeks appears in all glory with his arms crossed over his chest, with his ever stoic face sensing the chakra of the ANBU who were hiding in the shadows, slight tensing before relaxing again, inwardly smirking. Looking over the 2 girls who he never saw before, taking notice of their small blushes, and then at the side where his mother, who has aged a bit but nevertheless still beautiful, and finally his crush, not that he would admit out loud, Senju Tsunade. Giving them a brief nod, he returned his gaze towards the old man. Hokage-sama, you called? After a small nod from the old man, he narrowed his eyes and quickly recalled everything that happened. 2 days ago one of Tsukumo's Niken summon reported that he and the rest of his squad have encountered trouble when they were about to retrieve a scroll from our spy near the borders of Chuki no Kuni, and they are currently surrounded and are hiding in a small village there. They can't come out, or they would be sent, so thanks to Kushina's few injustice they are still safe, but for how long your mission is to head that city and rescue them with the scroll if possible. Tsunade, you will be leading this mission. With a sigh at the end, feeling quite older than his almost 50 years old, Tsunade, who has been listening and had already been briefed of all information that they had, turned to his temporary team and addressed them. Everyone except for Marabasa, meet me at Northwest Gates in 30 minutes. We'll be moving top speed so we can get there by tomorrow if we don't run into any problems. Dismissed. With a choruses of hi and a grunt, everyone vanished with their own shunshins. 29 minutes later, Kanahigakur Northwest Gate. Everyone except Tsunade were at the gates, both girls talking to the 2 guards who were from the same class a few years ago, and Naruto leaning against a tree nearby them were waiting for her. Suddenly a tornado of leaves that a second later revealed Senju Tsunade dictating the use of the classic Konoha's shunshin, who turned her gaze over her team. We will be doing introductions when we take a break to sleep. Right now we need to hurry up. Move! With another choruses of hi, they vanished through the forest where they were just a blur to the naked eye. 5 hours later, Takigakure borders. Been a boring and long 5 hours running full speed with a few breaks here and there just to dehydrate. Boring because only the 2 young girls seems to know each other, and since Tsunade have always been many kunoichi's dream goal to achieve in terms of power and beauty, they kept quiet. The Princess Senju, who preferred to maintain a professional posture, hasn't talked much as well, leaving that part for later on when they would introduce to each other. Well, except for his fellow clan member who she knew quite well. Shaking her head out of any thoughts she might have, she was interrupted by the same person who was invading her mind. In a monotone voice that was no more than a mere whisper so only they could hear, he said, "We're surrounded. 4, 5, 10, from all sides. The girls tensed slightly since they didn't expect it to run by any ninjas while on their way. As soon they jumped to a clearing, 10 blurs made themselves known surrounding them by all sides. So, would you look at that? 3 lovely girls. Oh, and what's that? Namakuji Senin? After I play with you in private we're going to get rich for your head, right boys? A lecherous grin and a chorus of agreements was heard. After a quick gaze to everyone, the young dark red-eyed Senju analyzed them with his sensory abilities, and in no more than 2 seconds he had all the information he wanted, only to hear the last part of the enemy's statement. Awagakure missing means fools. A explosion of chakra was felt and everyone turned their gazes to the black-haired young boy whose chakra had already cracked the floor where he was standing. Everyone took a step back after they heard the flat tone in his voice. I'll take care of them. Tsuchan, a nod and a look that said be careful from the said person, and another 2 nods of agreement were his response. He folded his arms across his chest and gazed at them. So, show me if you can dance and I'll reward you with a quick death. Getting some questioning and confused looks before the one that seemed to be the leader stepped forward, who started to performing a series of hand seals, earning a raised eyebrow at the slow speed. Don't get cocky, brat, Doton, Musaburutsuki. Earth release, devouring earth, slamming his palms on the ground. The earth around Naruto, who was now alone after the girls vanished to a nearby tree watching the fight going, started to shake, and medium claws shaped from earth started going towards the Senju at great speed, trying to crush him. The word try as Naruto with one of his hands did a simple hand seal, and ice exploded all around him, freezing everything, included the earth jutsu itself, creating multiple spikes along the way pointed in all directions. Hayatan, Sipakutsuki Bogo Cabe, sweating slightly because of a rare Kekii Genkai that is not even from Konoha. He was about to start another sequence of hand seals when his danger senses goes alert, and he rolled to the side, dodging one of the spears that was stuck to the wall of ice. Quickly getting over his shock, he looks up ahead and his jaws drops and all hell broke loose after the last word he would hear after passing to the afterlife. Chiresu said, holding another hand seal. Around 20 spikes who were stuck to the wall around him dispersed on all directions where only a high Chunin could hope to see the incoming. In 10 seconds it was all over. All that was left on the battlefield were corpses impaled by ice spears going through their chest or head. In the middle of everything stand the young man with his arms folded on his chest. Seconds later he scoffed in disappointment, gave a glance at where his team was hiding, a nod, and everyone vanished after burning the corpses. 45 minutes later, forest nearby Takigakure. The rest of the journey was uneventful. They finally decided to stop and camp so they can be refreshed for the next day. Currently they are sitting on some boulders or a trunk, whereas Tsunade started to talk. Okay. We are a few hours away from the borders of Tsuchi no Kuni. We gotta be paying even more attention to our surroundings now. So, let's start introductions. As you know, my name is Tsunade from the Senju Klassen. My dream is to have my own medical program and have a family of my own. Okay, you next. Stated points to the girl on her right side. Hello, my name is Yugao from the Yuzuki clan. I like to practice under the moonlight, Kenjutsu, my sword, Kushina-chan and Nai-chan. My dream is to become a renowned Kenjutsu mistress all over the world. With S smile and cheerful tone, with her long purple hair and black eyes burning with determination, cracking a smile on the younger Senju which went unnoticed by everyone. I guess I'll go now. My name is Kurinai from the Yuhi clan. I like genjutsu, Yu-chan, Kushi-chan, and practicing new genjutsus on perverts. My dream is to become the best genjutsu mistress, proving its usefulness on the battlefield just like ninjutsu, and have a family. Getting another small smile from the Senjus, which thanked God that these are kunoichis that are taking their careers seriously. Naruto from the Senju clan. I like create new jutsus, cold, Kasen, Tsuchan, my sensei and my sword. My dream is to bring peace to the world and have my own family to bring my clan to the full glory. Getting 3 small blushes, not that he noticed, and a raised eyebrow on the peace part, but they let go. Alright, Naruto, you'll get the first watch, you go after him, Kurinai next, and I'll get the last watch. We move early in the morning. Good night, she said, and after knowing that everyone heard her, and seeing that it was already late, she got up and went to his tent, swaying her hips not before giving a wink to Naruto. Unbeknown, they all did the same thing, getting a massive sweat drop from Naruto. I'm screwed. 7 hours later, morning came and soon everyone was up and already dressed, and with everything clean to not leave anything that could let someone track them, they vanished towards the small village close by the borders of Tsuchi no Kuni. During the travel, everyone had their senses kept high alerted so they wouldn't be taken off guard, but fortunately nothing happened. Finally the village came into view and they slowed their pace to formulate a plan, since Naruto had already informed them of at least 20 high Chunin, 10 Jounin and 1 borderline Kage chakras around the city. I can sense a few main right-on affinities, whereas the rest are Doton and some minors Katon. What the hell is going on? Kumo shouldn't be here. Since they were still at some distance, they stopped by a bridge, checking the surroundings, and seeing that they were clear, they started to make some plans to get their comrades out of there. 10 minutes later, Kanabikyo, after checking the plan over again to see if there was any flaws, upon nothing she smiled and turned her gaze over the group. Alright, so Kurinai and Naruto-kun, you both know what to do. After you rescue them, get out of the village and meet me here. She puts her index finger at a specific point on the map. I'm sure they have sensors, and knowing Kushi-chan, she has probably placed a barrier over them, so when you rescue them and leave the village they will notice and follow you. Me and Yuga will be waiting for you guys, and after making sure everyone is safe, we counterattack. Finished with the evil chuckle that made everyone shiver, with the choruses of hi. Tsunade and Yageo went their way while Naruto and Kurenai stayed the last, already going through a sequence of hand seals. Megan, Kokuni Araizu no Jutsu, said the young brunette as an atmospheric layer surrounds her and Naruto, gritting her teeth because of the chakra demands that the following technique will require to sustain. She goes through another set of hand seals and a second layer surrounds the first, making them invisible for some time to the naked eye. Megan, Niju Kokoni Araizu no Jutsu. Naruto whistles at the jutsu created by one of his ancestors, Senju token. Not bad. Not bad at all. But we should pick up the pace now that I know this jutsu is really taxing on your chakra reserves. Nodding in agreement, both picked up the pace, nothing more than a blur. Already having pinpointed their target's location from the map by Tsunade, they arrived at an isolated small house in 20 minutes. Their danger senses skyrocketed, telling them to move, which they did, and a second later, boom, 10 golden chains crashes where they stood, creating a huge amount of dust. Following the chain's direction, they relax a bit after seeing a red-haired Kunoichi standing there with her two nodachas in a defensive stance. Who's there? I know you're hiding. It's no use since I can sense you, said the soon-to-be busted purple-eyed Kunoichi, whose eyes were narrowed. I see Fuinjutsu Kekai. I can see several kanjis, and that's the famous Kongo Fuzukeki Genkai. Not bad, was the black-haired teen thought as he gave a brief nod to her partner, who dispelled the genjutsu. Kai. A second later, the atmosphere in front of Kushina seems to shimmer, and revealing two faces that she's been missing already for some time. Kure-chan. Naruto-kun. Guys, you can come out. It's our rescue team. As she finished, three figures dropped behind Kushina, revealing Mikoto, Tsukumo, and Fugaku. The first two with smiles on their faces, and the last one of annoyance. After a nod of acknowledge to everyone, Naruto crosses his arms over his chest and relays the plan. We need to meet Tsunade and Yugao. They are 2 miles to the southeast. We should be there in a few minutes if we don't encounter any nuisances. Let's move. With a few grunts and choruses of hi, they vanished from where they stood, getting ready for the battle ahead. A few miles from Kanabikyo, and has always been an arrogant man. He graduated from Kumogakure's academy at a mere age of 8, and raised through the ranks easily, whereas by the age of 16 he was one of the captains of the infamous Kinkaku squad. At some point he thought he would be the right candidate for the Reikage position, but ended up being the Nidame's successor. Not that he complained out loud, since he always loved doing some dirty jobs behind everyone's back, and being Reikage he couldn't enjoy the goods of life. Oh, I still remember that Sunegakure's bitch screaming to stop, fufufu. Anyways, right now he was on a S-rank mission where he was to deliver a very important scroll directly to the Tsuchikage so they could move to the phase 2 of their plan, which if succeeded would probably start the Daisanji Nikai Taisen, but would destroy half of a certain village if no one found out what they were planning. Everything was going according to the plan, but just after he left the place where he met the old crafty man Ryuten the Noenoki, just for a split of he saw it. A nuisance, oh joy. He tracked or tried to, but just after some small village came into view his chakra seems to disappear, but not after he sensed a familiar signature that he never would forget, which he encountered in the last war. Hataki Sakumo, Konoha's Shiroi Kiba. He noticed that he was with 3 more people, but none of them was familiar with. He hasn't tasted the thrill of a battle in a long time. He still remembered the last time, even if he didn't do the most damage to the enemy. He still remembers the last person that gave his squad so many problems that they thought they were going to be wiped out. Senju Tobirama. He's someone that N has the utmost respect, not that he would admit out loud, since he hates every single tree hugger. Since then he had been in some boring missions, and stopped honing his skills, preferring his new hobby. Fucking foreign kunoichis. Yes, and when they are feisty, even better. So when he sensed Sakumo's chakra he didn't felt any type of fear, since in his mind he could easily win. If he defeated, even though Kinkaku had done the most damage, the Nidame Hokage, who was Shiroi Kiba? Damn tree huggers. So after that he had made a perimeter surrounding the small village with his squad made of 5 ANBUs, which were all high jounin level plus Tsuchikage's minions. 20 high chunins and 5 veteran jounins. This is going to be a piece of cake. And then, I can cross another so-called famous shinobi. As he was planning various methods of killing Sakumo, his radio buzzes with activity yes? One of his ANBU squad replies immediately Sakumo, and his squad is moving out. Direction southeast, 3 miles from the bridge. It seems they were joined by someone that appeared in the village out of nowhere. What's the plan? Just one thought was going through his head, and he replied with a devilish grin, let's intercept them. Call everyone. We're going to play with them. Receiving a whisper of Roger and out. He vanished towards the destination, where in the middle of the road he was met by his ANBU and Iwagakurnins. 30 minutes later, unknown location 3 miles from Kanabi Bridge. After Naruto, Kurenai and the rest of them joined Tsunade and Yugao, they were going through the plan, which was about the battle that would take place in a few minutes. After Naruto told them about everything he knew, chakra levels and affinities, To the group who had already parted ways with the spy so he could continue his job after getting the scroll, it was already decided that the young Senju would take the highest level one, much to protest of Tsunade and worries of the rest except for Fugaku, who complained about that should have been him since he was an Uchiha, which was ignored much to his anger. Just as he was about to continue his run, 31 shadows emerged from the trees in front of them, not even surrounding them. The arrogance was so much that they just revealed themselves head on. The apparent captain stepped forward in a tone full of arrogance. Started Hataki Tsukumo today, Yudo? Is that Senju Tsunade? Seems to be our lucky day, boys. Today Konoha scums will be crippled by your death. As En was about to give the order to attack, a dark red-eyed stepped forward, standing right in front of him. What you want, tree hugger? Actually, you look like that old man that Kinkaku Force killed. Oh, that was the best mission I ever had. I think I will kill you first, then I'll play with the others. Fufufu. Not showing any reactions outside otherwise his stoic face. Inwardly his chakra kept rising the more he spoke, mainly because he mentioned his Tusan. Just as one of his dad's murderer was about to open his mouth to spill more garbage, a fireball sent from behind him right towards the middle where their enemy stood was launched before exploded, forming mushroom of dark smoke, and everyone went to his respective enemies, signaling the Uchiha's trademark technique Katan, Gakkaku no Jutsu. Senju Naruto vs En. After his team split in random directions, Naruto jumped to a grass field away from everyone else, and immediately tensed his muscles, and a second later he tilted his head to the side as a fist coated with right-un chakra went through where his head was. Suiryu, Kyuki no Kenkei. With amazing reflexes and speed, the Senju grabs his opponent's right arm, bringing it down, and using the opposite leg, the black-haired teen slams his left knee into the elbow, instantly breaking his foe's right arm, who grits his teeth from the sudden pain and doesn't react in time, just as Naruto's right hand slams his face in the ground that cracks under the force of it. Everything was done in 2 seconds, with a beautiful display of movement that if anyone was watching would see Naruto flowing like water through NS guard, just like his taijutsu style was designed, the Suiryu. Crack. Jumping backwards, the teenager watches as his opponent struggles to his feet, spitting a glob of blood to the ground and trying to fix his broken arm, which was giving him a good amount of pain. Sighing, he starts to do what was one of his favorite doings while in a dance. Enrage his opponent. You can't beat me. I can see you're dull just like a rusty kunai. It's amazing how you're still a captain of the infamous Kinkaku Force. Kumogakure nowadays is pitiful, reduced to garbage wannabe shinobis, HN. With a wave of his hand in a shooing motion and mocking his opponent as he wasn't worth his time, where inwardly he was smirking in victory, watching the waves of anger and hatred going through his enemy's eyes as he fixes his arm with another loud crack, even though he could barely move without feeling pain. He snarls, hearing him mocking his home and making him feel like an ant, already going for a long sequence of hand seals. You tree hugger scum, I'll kill you right on, John. Opening his mouth, a lightning compressed orb emerges, taking shape of a spear, which is launched towards his opponent at high speeds, who, already knowing which technique was going to be used, started with his own sequence, finishing just as the spear was about to hit him. Me right-un, Fureo Kesho Hogo, BOM. An explosion erupted from where Naruto was standing, smoke all around the place. Just as En was about to celebrate his victory, a golden plasma made of pure chakra, manipulation, covers the red-eyed teen all around him, 360 degrees, just like a barrier. The Kumonin was about to ask what the hell was that, when several lightning wisps manifest from the barrier towards him at high speeds. Dodging the same wisps for a few seconds, one of them catches his leg, sending jolts of electricity through it, paralyzing him for a second, which was all he needed, as the rest of the wisps grabs the other leg, waist, shoulders and wrists, effectively immobilizing him completely as the electricity damaged his chakra coils. He, a Kumogakure shinobi, being paralyzed. If anyone would tell him that he would die from a right-un base jutsu, that guy would probably meet his blade. He locks eyes with his opponent, and in a stoic tone with a hint of venom, states, it's over. Don't worry, because I'll send the rest of the scums that killed my Tusan to the grave after I destroy your puny, pathetic village. And yes, I am Tobirama's legacy. Finished as he releases the jutsu, walking towards his immobilized foe who was trying to talk, bringing the hilt of a very, very known treasure heirloom that brought fear for the first time in his opponent's eyes. That is where? Running some of his chakra through the hilt. A loud humming followed by an explosion of electricity was his answer, as his eyes widened in horror as he realized something. Yes, this was my father's former weapon, Raijin no Ken. But I took it to another level. He finished as he runs even more chakra where traces of purple electricity can be seen, which in 5 seconds it covered the whole blade, as the humming became even more audible and the power that he could feel from inside was incomprehensible. This dance was disappointing. Now, begone Raijin no Ken, Shurden. He thrusts the blade through En's chest, and a second later a shower of purple electricity roasts all his body inside out. And in a few seconds all that was left was the scent of burned flesh. He turns his gaze, narrowing his eyes towards a specific tree before vanishing in a sky blue flash. Had he stayed a few more seconds, he would see that same tree he was looking at shimmer out of existence, revealing an unknown man. Interesting, he certainly is skilled. Kanabikyo. 30 minutes later, after Uchiha Fugaku unleashed his Katan, Gakkaku no Jutsu, everyone was split. Senju Tsunade got to fight against a group of 5 Iwagakure Jounins. She wasn't really afraid of the odds, as she would show them why she was called the Namekijin Sanin, one of the Densetsu no Sanin. The battle was quick. Maybe because they thought that her prowess was just false rumors from Konoha just to scare the other nations. Fools, all it took was jump high enough in the air, charge an enormous amount of chakra through her right leg. Upon descended, one of them thought he could block it. The results were not beautiful. The strength of one of her Tsutenkyaku could make a whole mountain shake. Why the hell this fool thought he could block it? Ignorant people. She had used the shocked looks of the other Jonins to break their bodies. Pure taijutsu at the highest level. They never had chance. Hatake Tsukumo had it a little harder. He was up against 5 Kumogakure Anbu. Though he would show them why his beloved Hako Chikuretu was so famous, and why they gave him the moniker Konoha's Shiroi Kiba. These ANBUs though knew and respected Tsukumo's power, as they tried to keep their distance with several right-hand jutsus. That was not enough. Everyone is always propelled to make a small mistake at some point during a battle, and the ANBUs weren't an exception. The last thing they would see was flash of silver before everything went black. Uzumaki Kushina with her Kongo Fusa and Precious no Dachis, Uchiha Mikoto and Uchiha Fugaku with their Sharingan and Katan Jutsus took care of the 20 Chunins that thought they were just wannabe ninjas, swiftly. Even with Fugaku not help things in the matter by using teamwork and instead trying to show the heiress of the Uchiha clan that he was the superior and that everyone should be kissing his ass, they were dealt quickly. Even Mikoto grunted in disappointment before looking over her best friend Kushina, who was just cleaning her blades that were stained with her enemy's blood. She noticed her grim face. Probably for taking so many lives with little effort. Present time. Everyone was now on their way to their village. Silence reigned in the group, though for different reactions. Naruto was one of indifference, as he was still thinking about that presence he felt before he left. Tsunade and Tsukumo didn't care in the slightest, as they were already familiarized with the horror of war. Kushina had the still grim face for killing so many people. Mikoto had an impassive look, though if you looked closer you would see her stealing glances at the black-haired Senju. She really wanted to talk with the youngest boy in the group, as she had something in mind of a while when the Kumogakure's captain badmouthed their Naidame Hokage. If her assumptions were correct, this was big, and her assumptions were never wrong. Fugaku was just one of annoyance, and he too was stealing glances at the look that the Senju bastard was displaying. He wanted to fight him. No, I want to crush him. Put him in his place for ignoring him during all the mission. He would have that fight sooner or later. He gazed over Mikoto just in time to see her glance at the red-eyed for the 10th time, enraging him even further. Yes, soon he will have his deserved fight. And then, I'll destroy him. One day later, Kanahigaku no Sato. The rest of the journey was uneventful, and for their relief they didn't encounter any troubles. Everyone was dismissed after reporting everything to their Hokage. Sarutobi Hiruzen always been a pacifist man, preferring diplomatic solutions instead of brute force like some other people. Right now he was reading over some files and reports of some teams that were doing amazingly well after have dismissed a group that he believed would be the future of Konoha in the years to come. A knock on the door broke him out of his beliefs, much to his annoyance. Grunting a come in, the door opened as his former teammate and best friend entered the room with his stoic face not showing any emotions. Studying each other for several seconds, finally the visitor conceded and started talking. Hiruzen, my subordinates en route reported a rather unfortunate information. You see, as you asked me to, I sent many of my mans to spy and gather information in the other villages. And every single of them except the one stationed in Kirigakure reported that Kumogakure, Sunagakure and Iwagakure are fortifying their borders, increasing their weapon production and upping their military force. Hiruzen, you know what this means, right? The hailed shinobi no Kami that had taken his famous pipe and placed in his mouth as keeps listening the shinobi no Yami, blowing a reasonable amount of smoke out of his mouth much to the old warhawk's amusing, he replied in a grim tone. Daisanji Nikai Tyson, huh? It's only been almost 3 years since the last war. Should be impossible to recover in such time. Unfazed by what his leader and teammate said, he continued, it seems we have some spies on our midst if the other countries want to wage another war when we won 3 years ago. No doubt they will use their bija this time around, otherwise they wouldn't be so confident, and now we don't possess the Mokutan nor a strong Sharingan to tame and control them. What will you do, Hokage-sama? By the way, Danzo doesn't know that Kushina's Kongo Fusa can tame a bija. Also, I know it took like 7 or 8 years between second and third war, so I decided to include the bijus as an excuse to start early. Just by hearing his teammate calling him Hokage-sama, he knew that the odds were against them. Yes, they had many shinobis that became famous in the last few years, but were they ready for a war? He also knew that Konoha needed allies and fast, because in a few months the war was going to knock on their door. And if the contents of the scroll the last team received from one of the Jiraiya's spy was any indication, Konoha was going to need them badly. Umbu. Send some Chunins to warn the civilian council that for the time being they are disbanded for obvious reasons. Every one of you call all the clan heads for a shinobi council meeting. I don't care if they are having sex with their wives, I want them present in 1 hour or they will be executed in the spot. Also, summon Senju Naruto as well. Understood? The ANBU squad who were hiding in the shadows of the room stiffened at the killer intent their Hokage was transmitting, and with a chorus of "hi" they vanished without any sound. Hearing his best friend's roar, and smile came over his lips as this in front of him was the true shinobi no kami that would protect their village no matter what, although he raised an eyebrow when he called the newcomer as well as Senju Tsunade was the currently head of the clan. He thought nothing of it as it would be a good time to see if the rumors are true. Let's go, my friend. It's wartime. A full-blown smirk from Danzo was his answer, as they marched towards the now dubbed War Council Room. 1 hour later, Kanehegakure War Council Room. 3 things were going through everyone's head. Why was an emergency meeting called? Why is the youngest member of the Senju clan in the room? Troublesome. Couldn't resist it. Yes, those were definitely good questions as the most of them were training their successor and couldn't waste too much time. The last war had crippled their forces even though they still had a considerable amount of forces, and the same forces had quality in comparison with the other nations. So they needed every possible minute to pass everything their knowledge to the next generation, which held a massive potential if well roughed. Everyone quiet down their bickering as the doors opened, revealing the narrowed eyes of their Hokage, which put everyone over the edge as this one was not the grandfather figure that he usually portrays. Accompanying him were his advisors and former teammates. They took their respective seats and gazed over every single clan head, and the youngest member who held an indifferent look much to his hidden surprise. He really is your son, sensei. Opting to make things bluntly, he said probabilities are that in less than a year it will be the start of the Third Ninja World War. As soon as they heard those words, their minds raced through the implications as almost everyone's faces supported a look of shock and mainly apprehension except for Naruto and the Uchiha head. The last one coming decided to break everyone from their thoughts and asked his leader, is the source of that information safe and sure? And what are you planning to do, Hokage-sama? The shinobi no kami gazed over his old friend and one of the people that he has the most trust on, and that would easily give his life to protect him without second doubts. I had to bring him to this story as he can bring so much to any fiction out there, and of course he's the ancestor of one of my favorite Uchihas in the anime, Shursui. Though, I'll warn you, the story can take unwelcome changes. For example, I could make Orochimaru good and Minato betray Konoha, but I won't do that since I love him too much. An Uchiha who mastered the normal form of the Sharingan to its full capabilities. A monster in the battlefield that many look up for. Because of him everyone knew that age doesn't matter in the shinobi world. Father to Uchiha Mikoto. Uchiha Kagami, the High no Kami, god of fire, not original but oh well. Putting his thoughts to the side, Hiruzen replied, yes, my friend. One of the Jiraiya's spies detailed many things that Iwagakure is doing on a scroll that we had a team to get it. Actually, that team got into trouble and we had to send Tsunade here. He pointed to Tsunade and then turned to the youngest Senju and the young boy there. Rescue that team. Both of them gave a small nod to confirm everything, and Sarutobi was about to continue but the Uchiha beat him to it. Senju Naruto, am I right? He locked eyes with the spiky, black-haired teen as if analyzing him. The other doing the same thing, not even flinching at the gaze, replied in a monotone that made Danzo crack a smile. Yes. What seemed like hours of an intense staring, Kagami's eyes finally softened, and in a kind tone he continued, Miko-chan been babbling about some new guy for quite some time, but from what I can see with my eyes she made a fine choice. He cracked a smile at the end unnoticed to many except for Hiruzen, Danzo, Tsunade, Shirkunara and Naruto. Everyone had to reboot their minds as they heard the last part, but had to leave it for later as Danzo spoke for the first time. My ANBU also reported the same type of maneuvers occurring in the other great villages. Every single one is sending most of their troops to the borders and the tension's very high right now. Their minds were racing for any explanations that doesn't involve war or in others' case solutions. It was the Jounin commander, Nara Shirku, that spoke. Our best bet for now is to make an alliance with a small village, and in my opinion the best option would be Takigakure. Everyone turned their gazes upon to the youngest person in the room as some of them were quite angered by the sudden interruption, yet there were surprised looks as they were amazed that someone was able to follow and come to the same conclusion as a Nara if the nod of agreement was any indication. Shikaku's father, taking this chance to unravel the riddle that was Senju Naruto, asked, and why would you think that Takigakure would be our best option, young Naruto? Taking a step forward in the room as he was leaning on a wall, he took a deep breath and spoke with the same monotone, not missing a beat. Takigakure is our best option because it's common knowledge that they have a Bijou and the Ayu no Mizu, hero water for those who don't remember, in their possession, which would give us a lot more firepower and would make us able to win the first step of the war, intimidation. As not only we do have the strongest of all Bijus but the third one as well. They had to go over their plans again, and that would give us the best chance to win the second step of the war, organization, as they will be confused on how to react to such alliance, and most probably they will try to attack the weakest link, that would be Takigakure of course, but we already know that, and there we would win the third step of the war, reaction. As they would think that a supposedly weak and small village, even though they possess a Bijou, couldn't take head-on an invasion from one of the 5 great nations, but imagine their surprise when they see a platoon of Kanehegakure shinobis. They will have second thoughts, and right there, and then Takigakure would emerge victorious without doubt, and it would make the other villages dubious about their power, many accusations between their higher-ups that would affect the moral of their shinobis, and finally this brings me to the final and fourth step of the war. An evil smirk crossed his lips as he spoke in a tone that sent chills to everyone's spines, though for some reason it aroused Danzo on many levels. Annihilation. A month later. It's been 1 month since the first War Council meeting. The civilian side were outraged, but they were ignored, and later everyone knew the real reason as the Konoha was locked up and became high alert. No one without Hokage's permission comes in or out. Because of Naruto or his father's notes, Hiruzen was able to defeat the paperwork, so now it gives him plenty of time to do everything else. Suck on that, Onoki. Everyone's training were increased tenfold. The academy's graduation was set to 12 years old instead of the usual 14. Mass weapons production. In this month, Naruto almost completed his senjutsu training. He was able to call upon the nature energy and fight already, but it still would give him some physical modifications resembling to an hawk. He would make sure to finish it in the next month so he could still create some new jutsus, as that is one of his favorite hobbies. He also took his training up a notch by studying the latest notes from his father, and mainly Mito's, as it gave him a deep knowledge and understanding of the lost arts of Fuinjutsu. Sadly, he still wasn't able to communicate with the spirit that resided inside of him, but he of all people, knew the importance of the need to be patient. He also spent a lot of time with his mother, as he's worried for her because of the impending war. More like she was worried with him, as she had quit being a shinobi for a few years now, and will not be going to the front lines like her son. Needless to say, they spent hours and hours with each other, valuing every second of it, as deep down they knew it could be the last. Naruto was broken out of his recollections as he was already in front of the Hokage's tower, as some new ANBU recruit had bragged himself into his house thinking that he was allowed to do what he wanted. 3 Kori-sanban, Ice-sanban, on his neck from Marayuki was his answer, and to remind everyone that although she's a civilian doesn't mean she can't kick some punk's ass. Sighing for losing himself in his thoughts again, he cursed himself for forgetting to just use a simple shunshin to get the job done. Oh well, that walk was actually nice. His body shattered in small pieces of ice which dropped soundly on the floor. He was standing missing the staff cleaner's curse, his whole being, as it reminded them of Senju Tobirama, when he used Mizu's shunshin instead of his famous Hiraishin. Unknown to them, like father, like son, Hokage's office. 3 figures were standing in the office waiting for the last person to join them so they could get this over with. They were broke out of their little talking as the room dropped several degrees, as ice started to form out of thin air and merging together. A second later, a figure they all knew too well revealed himself. The black-haired Senju gazed over the familiar faces on his side and guessed that they were going in a mission together. Oh, Fugaku will be very happy about this when he finds out. After shaking himself from the sudden temperature change, Hiruzen started. Since you're finally here, let's start. Hataki Sakumo, Senju Naruto, and Uchiha Mikoto, you will be going on a S-ranked mission with extreme importance for the village, and if you succeed it will increase our chances on the impending war. With a chorus of high and a confident grunt from Naruto, much to Hiruzen's annoyance, he continued, you will leave immediately to Takigakure. We will offer a temporary alliance between the 2 villages, in case they want to continue very well, but we will go for the temporary option firstly. Take this scroll as it contains many valuable information about the other nations as well as some plans for the alliance in case they accept. Don't fail this task. The small pleading present in his tone was noticed by everyone in the room, and they vowed to do everything in their power to complete the mission. Without anything else to add, he dismissed them, who vanished in their own shunshin after agreeing that they would be grabbing extra supplies just in case. The old Hokage gazed through the window, watching over his village as his exhausted face finally replaced the stoic he's been portraying during this difficult times that would only get worse in the future. May we have heaven's luck and help us survive to what's to come. 7 hours later, Takigakure Waterfall. 3 figures could be seen walking towards a specific waterfall. If anyone would see them, they would probably think that they were mentally disturbed or they were just thirsty and wanted some water that most likely was infected. Well, not their problem anyway, but they knew better. The waterfall was the secret entrance to get into the village. It was common knowledge that Takigakure possessed one of the strongest bijus, so one would ask why wouldn't one of the great nations kidnap the Jinchuriki to increase their strength? The answer lies in the fact that no one knew how to get into the village. Of course, there were those who went through the waterfall and found the secret passage. Their greed was so palpable that not even once they informed their village that they found the passage, just because they wanted to be hailed as heroes, and so they tried to invade. That was the last thing they would ever done. You see, even though you go through the waterfall, the next place is covered by a potent triple-layer genjutsu. There's always patrols around that cave to look out for any intruders. They never know what hit them until it's too late. But the 3 figures that were currently getting closer and closer to the waterfall had the knowledge about this place, and they knew the details since it was the late Shodame Hokage that helped build this place. It was him who offered their biju, Raki Seben Komiai, or most commonly known as Nanabai. Even with that knowledge, Konoha never once tried to do anything that would damage their village, their people. And that's why they were on good books. And that's why the 3 figures suddenly stopped, as well as the ANBU who were watching from the shadows tensed when the black-haired teenage boy lifted his arm and started to perform several intricate movements with his hands. Just as he finished, 3 shadows that were hiding above the waterfall descended and surrounded them, and what seemed to be the captain started to speak in a monotone voice. Konoha, our leader has been expecting you. Hope your journey has been without any occurrence. Follow us, please. The visitors gave a small nod to him, and so they all moved further, unaware of the dangers that will take place in the next day. Takigakyo knows Sato. If the waterfall was beautiful, Takigakyo's something else. Although not even half in size as if Kanehigakure had made for his beauty, nevertheless they kept following the Anbu as they could appreciate the amazing view of the village later. They were brought to a modest tower not as big as Hokage's building, but they didn't really care as architecture was not their job. As they finally arrived at what was supposedly to be the office of the leader of this village, they were served some hot tea before a person walked towards them, his footsteps heavy as his figure. Short, smooth brown hair that was graying all on the outside with just the top of his head still having brown hair. He wore a black Takigakyo forehead protector around his forehead, and his hair hang over the left and right sides of it, and he also had brown sideburns. He also had small black-colored eyes and a small brown-colored goatee. This was Takigakyo no Hizen, the leader of Takigakyo. The same person spoke in what appeared to be his best grave tone. So, what does Konoha want with our little modest village? One day later, it was a success. After hours talking with their leader, they eventually came to an agreement where they just needed to share some trade routes with them, offer some protection, not that they wouldn't do even if he didn't ask, and job done. Now the main problem are the four figures in front of them. They were in the clearing outside of the main town. These four unknown persons just appeared out of nowhere. They could hear the ruckus coming from the village, and Naruto could tell that a battle was going on, but the main thing was Hizen's chakra. It dwarfed even his own massive one, and it didn't take a genius to figure out why was that. He has drank the Ayu no Mizu. That must mean the enemy is strong. Hatake Sakuma was relaying orders to his team, but the Senju wasn't listening as his eyes narrowed to one of the persons in the group. I remember this chakra. Flashback. He turns his gaze, narrowing his eyes towards a specific tree before vanishing in a sky blue flash. Had he stayed a few more seconds, he would see that same tree he was looking at shimmer out of existence, revealing an unknown man. Flashback end. The same person seemed to read his mind as he speaks. So, you remember me? Not bad, brat. A very tall, tan-skinned man with long dark brown hair. His eyes had an unusual coloring, green irides, no pupils and red sclerae. His hair hang loose, his sweatband covering his forehead, and a black-colored mask covering his lower face, where underneath it his mouth was stitched together at the edges. He wore no shirt, revealing all the stitches on his torso, dark green, roughed-up pants and black shinobi sandals. Naruto gave a silent nod to his sensei, who appeared to get the message as he grabbed Mikoto, much to her protest and confusion, and vanished with the three other that were with the tall man following them. The man as soon noticed this, voiced his thoughts in a mock-tone voice. Oh? You think that you can beat me by yourself? Maybe I overestimated you, brat. The only reaction shown from Naruto was the slight twitch on his eyebrow for being called brat, but then narrowed his eyes as he felt the four signatures inside of him separated. What is this? He has four affinities, but they are kind of individual, like he's four different people but in the same body. I've read about this somewhere, but where and what? Seeing that the youngling isn't going to respond, he continued, what makes you think you can beat someone who fought the late Senju Hashirama and lived to tell the tale, going as far as injuring him badly? Naruto's eyes actually widened in shock at this information, but not in shock for why he said, but in realization. That's it. It was from Hashirama's GG notes. Many years ago, Konoha offered a gift to Takigakyo in form of friendship. A kinjutsu. Jiangu. Damn, GG. It's just as Tusan said, you're a baka. Yes, he had an advantage by knowing its capabilities, but he realized that he only had four affinities, and knowing the Jiangu made him able to harness all the elements. It means he's looking for the last one. Doton, Katan, Futon, and Suiton. That means he's after an heart that contains a strong Raiton affinity. And that also means that since he has only seen me using Raiton, I have an advantage in that regard as well. He stopped his amazing, in his opinion, analyses and spoke for the first time, or more like scoffed, you can't beat me. Get loose. That seemed to get a reaction out of him as he sneered, let me show you then on how inferior you are to me. He finished going through a sequence of hand seals, puffing his cheeks and exhaling a huge blast of wind at tremendous speed in his direction. Futon, Atsugai. Of course he would use Futon since he thinks I'm mainly a right-on user. Let's see if my training was good for something. Watching the blast of wind coming closer, he slams his palms on the ground as the ground shook, and a second later a large wall made of earth ascended right in front of him. Doton Doria Hiki. The blast collided with the wall as Naruto gritted his teeth, pushing more chakra on it, as it wasn't one of his main elements, and he hadn't enough training to make it even a minor affinity. Nevertheless, he finally would take this chance as his opponent couldn't see him. Pinpointing his chakra, he made a handed seal as a plume of smoke appeared on his side. Kage Bunshin no Jutsu. Giving him a nod, the Bunshin jumped to the side, going through several hand seals in a blur of a movement. Moisture in the air starts to merge together, taking shape of two huge dragons of water out of thin air. A look of shock and drool was going on the man's face. Suiton, Tsunsur Yuden no Jutsu. A dual roar broke out of his surprise as the dragons came upon him in amazing speeds as he went through his own hand signs, slamming both palms on the ground as the area around him shook even more than before as three strong, thick walls emerged from the ground, as he awaits for the imminent explosion. Doton, Atsui Toripahiki. A loud booming and a shower of water was heard from the man behind the wall that made him miss the poof sound of the clone, and he paid with it. Futon, Kaze no Yaiba. Pain. Raiton, Kanri Nentenki, and more pain. Blood exploded from the body in front of him, as his left hand was covered by an invisible layer of chakra as a huge pressure of wind could be felt from it. His right hand had been placed over the green-eyed's back where intricate small black markings materialized on his skin. He had noticed the 4 masks stuck to it, so the black-haired had decided to put it over the blue one, sending a high current of electricity that instantly fried the mask. He analyzed with slight amusement the power of his jutsu as he brought back his hand. The teen had already jumped backwards as he watched, slightly amazed by the remaining 2 hearts doing its work. So, I destroyed his Katan heart with my Kaze no Yaiba and the Suiton heart with my Nentenki. All it's left is the Doton and Futon. As he finished the train of thoughts, his opponent had already stood up. Surprise and shock as he replayed everything he had just seen. The young boy in front of him had used multiple affinities and didn't even seem to be winded. He had to finish it quickly or he would definitely die, or maybe it would be better if he could escape. He gazed over the other battles going on, and he noticed the young girl finishing of his teammate. TSH, I need to escape. An idea occurred, hit him, and he let out an evil smirk that went unnoticed to Naruto. The whitish mask started to dispatch itself from his back. The threads started to merge together, taking shape of a strange 4-legged body with thin wings. Naruto noticed this black creature, tensing his muscles as he sensed the build-up on chakra before opening its mouth and stomping one of its feet, creating a good amount of dust in front of him. A second later it blowed up in huge gust that combined with the dust in the air at the Senju, who didn't notice a man merging with the ground beneath him. Futon, Mugen Saijin de Tapa. Inwardly cursing himself for reacting too slow, he stretched his arms forward with both of his palms open as he pushed a significant amount of chakra to it. Ice formed out of thin air as a sized dome took shape around him before the gust could hit him. Hayatan, Hai Beheki. As the ice dome protected him from the gust, he heard a painful, familiar high-pitched scream. He turned his gaze immediately to his left, and eyes widened in horror as a figure held a kunai over Mikoto's throat. How? I didn't see Hai minutes ago. Mikoto had a difficult time this time around as her opponent was kinda skilled and that damn armor was sturdy as hell. But every jutsu has its weakness, and so when she noticed the heavy breaths that her opponent was releasing, she concluded the armor took a lot to sustain it. So she only needed to prolong her battle. No more than 5 minutes, he made a mistake by pushing more chakra through his damaged armor to restore it, overestimating his reserves as the next second he dropped to one knee. The last thing he saw was a huge dragon made of fire on his way before his flesh was roasted. The beauty took a few deep breaths, looking over her sensei, seeing he was almost finished against his 2 opponents, and then over her hidden crush, who was fighting a black thingy with a mask. Her danger sensors went on high alert as a shadow loomed over her, sending a punch directly at her face. The Hai no Megami tilted her head to the side before sending her own punch that was paired before suddenly subversal threads came out of the figure's wrists, immobilizing her own wrists and legs. A powerful enhanced with Doton chakra knee hit right on her stomach, instantly breaking her ribs, and she screamed in pain. She didn't even register the voice of her captor. Now you'll be my assurance for me to escape this place. Maybe I'll even take your heart as a thanks, as you held in high Katan affinity. What do you say? His answer was the another scream as he made pressure on her broken ribs. Present time, eyes burned with anger and frustration. His whole body trembled as thick dark blue chakra exploded from his body. The ground beneath him, and the ice dome that was protecting him, cracked completely as everyone froze what they were doing from the sheer pressure washed over them. He clapped his palms. Suiton, Kuriopatora Yuakatiki Sure Sun. Moisture in the air gathered and took shape of a tree-sized pure white saber tiger. Everyone stared in shock at the imposing animal. And to everyone's further shock and others in horror, it spoke in a rough voice. Master. His murderous eyes never left the green-eyed shinobi behind Mikoto, as he spoke to the creature. Take care of that nuisance black creature for me. Not even a second had passed as he finished his statement. Mist started to gather around White Tiger before it expanded throughout the battlefield, enveloping them. The animal emerged with the mist and a second later reappeared behind the black creature, thrusting his large claws through his mask and threaded body. Naruto had already jumped to where Mikoto and the man were standing, his eyes boring his soul as out of thin air a sword of water materialized after condensing and forming a simple blade. Ice started to cover its entirety, and in over a second became a pure white ice blade as upon a small contact with the grass beneath him it instantly froze. Hayatan Heiken. The man behind Mikoto snapped out of his thoughts and immediately spoke. You idiot. If you take one more step I'll kill her. Do you know who you're dealing with? I am Kakuzu, currently the oldest person in the world. You can't fool me, brat. The Uchiha locked eyes with her friend in front of her, and she noticed the amount of concern and determination in those eyes of his. She gave him a true smile. Naruto finally spoke. This dance is over. Don't. Kakuzu's eyes widened in shock as every part of his body just froze out of nowhere. His blood, chakra coils, and his heart froze. The last thing he saw was the ice tip of an white blade coming out of his chest. Blink. Hiraishin no Jutsu. Flashback. Blood exploded from the body in front of him, as his left hand was covered by an invisible layer of chakra as a huge pressure of wind could be felt from it. His right hand had been placed over the green-eyed's back where intricate small black markings materialized on his skin. He had noticed the 4 masks stuck to it, so the black-haired had decided to put it over the blue one, sending a high current of electricity that instantly fried the mask. He analyzed with slight amusement the power of his jutsu as he brought back his hand. Flashback end. The blade shattered along with the body in front of him. The last thing he saw were the screams of horror of Mikoto before he let the exhaustion take over him. Battle for Nami no Kuni. 8 months later. It has been a few months since the battle between Naruto and Kakuzu. The death of Hizen, who gave his life to protect the village by drinking a great amount of Ayu no Mizu, and after defeating multiple opponents his body couldn't take it anymore. Though he died with a smile on his face. It was his son that took the role of leader, even though he was very young, being only 17 years old. He's very matured and has decent shinobi training. The Konoha squad thought they would have to reopen the negotiations, but to their relief the young leader said that he trusted his father well enough in this matters. So, they left the small village. On their way back, Mikoto scolded Naruto for risking her life like that, much to his annoyance and Sakumo's amusement as he noticed the amount of affection in the beauty's words. Sakumo surprised Naruto when he said that his wife was expecting. The young Senju almost snorted at that, knowing how lazy his sensei was so where and how the hell did he get a girlfriend he would never know. Though he got a little bit shocked when offered to be the child's godfather. He accepted eagerly as he felt that his family had just grown a bit more. After 3 months everything was going fine. The alliance with Takigakure gave them a little more room to breathe. Their shinobi forces kept growing both in quantity and quality. It was by the 5th month that Sandaime Hokage received disturbing news. Flashback 3 months ago. Kanehigakure no Sato, Hokage's office. Why would Sunagakure plan to attack Nami no Kuni Tebane? It was a blonde-haired with icy blue eyes boy who replied, Kushina-chan. Every nation is now trying to amass territories or forcing alliances for themselves. For example, Nami is a good strategic point if they decide to make a direct attack on us. Not just that, but if they succeed in conquering Nami, they will have many resources such as minerals. Kirigakure won't even bother with that small country as they are busy with their own civil war. Kushina hummed and thought at what her friend said before asking what of the other great villages. It was the youngest in the group that answered this time, with a monotone voice here. I'll explain it for you using a graphic. Finishing, he went through some hand seals before manipulating his chakra with his fingertips as blue strings started to shape into several letters and lines. It took 10 seconds, everything was explained in front of her, and her mind started to work miles per second with the graphic made of chakra on the wall. Tsuchi no Kuni, Iwagakure no Sato Kyuzugakure / Ishigakure, Kaze no Kuni, Sunagakure no Sato Tanagakure, Kaminari no Kuni, Kumogakure no Sato Shimagakure / Yugakure, Hai no Kuni, Kanehigakure no Sato Takigakure / Yu no Kuni, Tetsu no Kuni neutral. Our allies, Yu no Kuni is between Hai and Kaminari's borders. The Kazekage, knowing this, made a temporary alliance with the Reikage. If Kumo supports them winning over Nami, they will help them as well with Yu country. At least that's what rumors says, though it makes sense. Regardless, we will be involved in 2 fronts, and no matter what we can't lose Nami because it was the Hokage who continued / interrupted because if we lose Nami, Konoha and Taki will be surrounded by all sides. Everyone was in deep thought at the implications. This was basically a declaration of war, but none of the nations had made the first step yet. What worried them was the fact that it didn't even have started and there was already 2 great villages with a common plan that would affect negatively Konoha. They were probably still mad for losing both the first and second war. A gray-haired man spoke for the first time. So, how long do we have? An attack like that should take its time to be well planned. With a sigh, Hiruzen replied around 3 to 4 months. Sakumo hummed and thought before voicing his opinion. We don't have much time then. What are you planning to do? We will be marching to Nami no Kuni in 3 months' time. We are closer than any of them. Jiraiya's spy reported that they were planning to send their Jinchuriki, so I'll be personally leading this squad. Everyone turned their gazes behind them as a new figure entered the room and walked into the middle of the office, ignoring the shocked looks of the people there except Hiruzen and Naruto, who had sensed him already. Sakumo broke out of his shock and addressed the figure. Kagami-sama, are you sure that's wise? The now identified Uchiha Kagami replied without missing a beat, yes. Although I'm old, my experience will prove invaluable for the success of this mission. There will be roughly 350 shinobis on our side as we still haven't fully recovered from the last war, against at least 300 Sunanines. Kumogakure will be the wild card. Our quality will have to destroy Sunagakure's army faster before their backup arrive. He stopped for a few seconds before glancing to someone at his side. Naruto-san, you will have to lead their Jinchuriki away of the battlefield, or we will be destroyed. You have your father's notes plus Mito's training. You are one of our best Fuinjutsu user. Do you think you can defeat him? Naruto scoffed before returning to his impassive gaze. Sure. I grow tired of these Kages and higher-ups that think bijus are just tools to be used the way they wish. If the Tuchan's notes are true, then bijus are not mindless beasts. They are sentient, and have feelings just like us humans. I need to try and speak to one of them if I ever get the chance. I don't know how, but I need to try. Everyone was looking at him in curiosity, but filled that for later as there was a war starting soon. But what no one knew what that inside of a certain red-haired present in the room, A chained fox opened one of his big red slitted eyes and had only one thought on his mind before closing it again. Interesting. Flashback end. So, the next 3 months everyone up there training as they knew that this would be the push needed to the beginning of the Daisanji Nikai Taisen. Tomorrow would be the day that many inexperienced shinobis and kunoichis would start to cherish the life itself and start to live to its fullest and without regrets. It was going to be their first war, and the first major battle nonetheless. Many ninjas would be losing their lives. And for what reason? Just because their kages ordered them to? What would they get for this? Wealth? Fame? Fools. Naruto was snapped out of his thoughts as he felt the ground shake. He looked over his shoulders and observed Konoha's army of 350 battle-hardened shinobis. He could feel the nervousness rolling in waves. The Senju felt a shaking hand interlace with his own and gazed to his side as dark red eyes met charcoal. He let a concerned emotion show through his eyes before speaking. It will be alright, Miko-chan. It didn't help her fears at all. No one could blame her. The beautiful black-haired teen spoke in a shaky voice. That's not helping, Narukun. Tell me something else. Tears were threatening to leave her eyes if the moisture was any indication. He replied, if we survive this, let's go on a date. Even if the current situation was very tense, she managed to crack a smile. Thank you. I would like that. They noticed a random Chunin appeared in front of the captain several meters from them, though they could still hear him speak. Taicho, they arrived. At those 2 words everyone tensed. The pressure in the air was almost suffocating. Kagami sent a glance towards Naruto. The latter noticed this and nodded to him. He addressed Mikoto and placed a reassuring hand on her shoulder before vanishing from his spot. I'll have your back if you need me. And Mikoto, A questioning look on her face as her Sharingan unknowingly activated with tears dropping from it. Burn them. The last thing Naruto saw was the newborn determination on those red eyes of her that promised hell to whoever comes in her way, before vanishing. Though she didn't notice the black kanjis where his hand was before it disappeared inside her flak Chunin vest. The battle for Nami no Kuni was about to begin. Several minutes later, even his father's notes couldn't prepare himself for this. It was horrible. War. He could hear the shouts, screams, explosions. It was unbearable. It baffled him the amount of death he could sense at distance. Naruto didn't care about if he killed 1 or hundreds ninjas, but didn't enjoy either. Everything he has done and will do is without regrets. Was this the peace Hashirama-jiji fought so much for? No. His uncle had some fault in this. Sharing beings that possess an extraordinarily, an almost unlimited amount of power is like asking if a power-hungry fool would like some free Sharingans. Peace is not a relationship of nations. It is a condition of mind brought about by a serenity of soul. Peace is not merely the absence of war. It is also a state of mind. Lasting peace can come only to peaceful people. But Hashirama didn't understand this. He didn't understand that there is a lot of evil in the world. Now it was up to him to eradicate this evil. He would give Sunagakure a taste of his power. And this was Nami no Kuni, Land of Waves. He was playing at home. Placing his index finger on the ground, he sent a pulse of chakra, immediately detecting and finding his target. 7, 8, 9, 20. There's 20 of them. Of course, the Jinchuriki didn't come alone. Hiding in the trees, he suppressed his chakra to the limit, observing as 20 figures were walking towards the battlefield. They looked like they weren't in a hurry. He also noticed the state of mind of their Jinchuriki. He had an insane, bloodthirsty grin. If Naruto had to guess, he would say it was from the seal's doing. Sunagakure held no real seal master in their ranks. Everyone knew that. It was another reason he would have to try and free the beast inside of him some other day. The Senju was about to start his plan when his danger sensors went high alert, and he immediately jumped out of the branch he was standing as a spear made out of sand impaled the tree where he was crouched. What? But I was suppressing my chakra. He landed gracefully on the ground, but he was instantly surrounded by 19 Sunanins as the Jinchuriki was behind them with his arms folded and a stoic face gazing at him. Interesting. He must have sensed me using that sand of his. He can control it freely. It must be his Biju power. Naruto put on his impassive face, analyzing the shinobi surrounding him. Give up. You're surrounded with no way to escape. He gazed over the fool who spoke to him with indifference. Now do I? In that moment the air around them seems to cool down several degrees as in several areas the moisture started to compact into many frozen spikes. There was a shout of guys, look! And just like that everyone froze in shock as the same spikes made of ice started to descend towards the enemies at amazing speeds. Hayatan, Sumatai 10. But before it could impale them, sand exploded from the ground, forming several walls above his opponents. The spikes pierced through the sand and almost reached the other side, which made the Jinchuriki widen his eyes slightly. TSH. This sand is annoying. Naruto clapped his hands, his chest bulged before spitting a huge amount of water to the ground. An enormous 3-store-sized wave formed beneath him. Suiton Baku Swishoha. The Jinchuriki slammed his hands on the ground and a good amount of sand emerged from it as it tried and failed to contain the massive wave, although it bought enough time for some Sunanins to escape as he noticed the sand turning into mud and slowing down. Suna no Bakusai Cabe. Naruto gritted his teeth as he only had crushed 3 enemies with that wave. He landed on the water after a few seconds in front of his 16 opponents plus the Jinchuriki. He had to take these nuisances down, but he also had to stop this stupid sand. A distraction? He was snapped out of his thoughts as many of his opponents started to sped up through hand seals before breathing in huge combined gust of wind. Futon de Tapa. Naruto smirked at this opportunity. He clapped his hands, using 1/4 of his chakra, as from the water beneath him a massive amount of water started to take shape of a huge dragon who with a loud roar took the gust head-on and clashing with it before a big explosion of water washed over everyone. Suetun, Suryuden no Jutsu. The Sunanines tensed as a figure materialized in the middle of them, but before they could react a big claw made of sand was thrust into the black-haired man's chest. Everyone cheered except for the impassive Jinchuriki who noticed the smirk growing on the lone shinobi. Tchata Kagabunshin, get away from him. Too late. Using his own body as a medium for the paper, with a gracious movement with his hands several exploding tags formed from the large sheets each bearing intricate seals before attaching themselves onto his opponent's bodies and in huge explosion rocketed through the area for 5 whole minutes. Gojo Kibaku Fuda. Boom. As the smoke caused from the explosion cleared, Naruto and his mission's target were in front of each other. In the middle of them a large crater with many different parts of various persons' bodies. The Senju smiled. What a nice view. Ichibi, we can finally have our dance. Not waiting to a reply, he made a single hand seal as clouds started to form above them, and soon enough rain poured on them. Hijitsu Kirasame. The Sunagekyu's Jinchuriki, who if Naruto remembers correctly went by the name Sanyu, widened his eyes in shock as his own sand started to dissolve into the ground. He pushed more chakra into it but the results were the same, and immediately narrowed his eyes at the boy in front of him. What did you do? That's for me to know and for you to find out. Now good night. As he said that a single hand seal was formed and before his opponent could react everything around him turned black. What? Kokwanjo no Jutsu. Naruto didn't waste time and using his amazing speed, he leaped towards his opponent, his hand already on the hilt placed on his waist as an humming sound before an explosion of electricity was heard. That was all Sanyu heard before all he knew was pain. Raijin no Ken Hoden. Pain, darkness, blood, weak. This was all the emotions and thoughts running through the Jinchuriki's mind as Naruto sensed the build-up of malevolent chakra coming from inside his opponent. He immediately reacted as purple flames lit up on all of his fingertips as different kanjis could be seen in it. Oh no, you don't Gojo Fuin! He thrusted his fingers on his opponent's stomach and almost instantly the chakra that was rising, receded. Naruto watched as the boy's body dropped to the ground unconscious. Pity. He placed a hand over the brown-haired boy's as chakra became visible to the naked eye dancing on his hand and after a few seconds of concentration, Naruto clicked his teeth and murmured something before everything went black. Hijitsu, Rinraku Kokoro. Mindscape. Naruto opened his eyes and smiled at his successful technique. Rinraku Kokoro was based on those Yamanaka's mind walker jutsus. He wasn't as good as those guys from that clan as he couldn't go too deep in someone's mind, but it was good enough for what he wanted and proof of that was the mountains of sand in front of him. A mad voice snapped out of his thoughts. You! What and how are here? He raised an eyebrow at the monster in front of him. He noticed the choker strapped around his neck. He addressed him, nonetheless. Ichibi. The beast narrowed his eyes at the calm face of this boy. A side of him was curious why this boy seemed to be so calm, but he couldn't dwell much as another jolt of electricity struck his body and roar in anger. I'm going to kill you, Ningen. Come closer so I can eat you. He didn't even flinch at the threat. Getting to the point, he spoke. I want to help you. Free you from being used as a weapon. Anger built up inside of the Biju as sand exploded behind him but didn't go too far as another zapping sound was heard followed by a painful scream. Naruto seeing this vanished in a sky blue flash, just pure speed, in midair just in front of the choker. He placed his palm on it and pushing some chakra through it. Grunting at the shocks he was getting, a white flash blinded everyone before everything went back to normal. Fuinjutsu Yurei Shiru. The choker was still there but the shock stopped which the Biju noticed and was about to cheer in delight when he saw the boy's body falling to the ground and at this height he wouldn't be able to land properly as Naruto didn't have the same control nor chakra inside someone's mindscape. But before he could react to amortize the fall, sand enveloped him and gently placed him on the ground. Naruto turned around locking eyes with the giant beast and saw gratitude running through his eyes. Thank you? A smile graced Naruto's lips before replying it's fine. I can't free you right now since I still need to create the proper seal for it, but I promise I'll be back. Shikaku. See you, be ready when the time comes. Naruto's body dissolved from the mindscape not noticing the small smile on Shikaku's lips. So, this is the boy Kurama told us about in the meeting. Interesting. Outside. After leaving the mindscape, Naruto reopened his eyes with a new goal in his mind. After lining up the unconscious Jinchuriki to some tree and placing his Shiki formula on the boy's back which wouldn't disappear for some years, he sped up through hand seals, nipping his thumb and slamming his hand on the ground. Kuchios no Jutsu. A huge plume of smoke covered the area before a strong flap of wings dispersed it, revealing a large hawk. The boss, Garuga. Greetings, brat. It seems the war has finally started, and if the scent of blood in the winds are any indication. Naruto twitched his eyebrow at the earlier remark but ignored it. Yo Garuga-chan. Take me to the battlefield up ahead, please. She didn't have to be asked twice though she beat his head for the chan suffix before leaping to the skyscraper with a violent flap of her large wings. Naruto seated on her head with his legs crossed and clapped his hands, taking a few deep breaths and just waited for what was about to come. Nami no Kuni battlefield. Death, blood, limbs, destruction. That was the conclusion Mikoto reached about war, after being fighting for a few hours without stopping. She didn't know how many ninjas she had killed. The long black-haired teen just stopped caring anymore. Her tears had already dried. She had cried enough, especially when her father was almost killed. Though the injury he got would probably end his career as a shinobi, the beautiful Uchiha could feel that Konoha was going to emerge as the winner. But at what price? So many lives lost. So many futures stolen. So many dreams destroyed. So much hatred created. Even in this pandemonium, she still had a thought running in her mind. Naruto. Mikoto was snapped out of her thoughts as the ground started to shake and suddenly stopped as a loud buzzing was heard. She gazed over in the direction of the sound and paled. Kumogakure's flag. There was no way they could escape. Konoha had roughly 100 shinobi still alive, but everyone was tired, even Minato. They were starting to push Suna's defensive lines, but now, everyone tensed as they heard a shout of "kill them," and the ground started to shake again as the roars of agreement made everyone take a step back. Mikoto was about to engage and burn the first fool she saw when a monstrous gust of wind sent every single Kumonin backwards. A second later, everyone looked upwards as they saw what was probably the biggest hawk they have ever seen. Futon, Kaze no Maki. Thank you for stopping them, Garuga. Drop me there if you would. Garuga took to the skies again before dropping Naruto where Mikoto was, who had a shocked look as her friend had dark red markings around and under his eyes as well in the middle of his forehead. They shared a simple nod, sending a hidden message before narrowing their eyes at their enemy. We will talk later, young man. Hi. They watched as the Kumos and Suna's commander relayed orders to their army, who started to running towards their location. The Senju and Uchiha duo smirked as they went through a chain of hand seals, their chests puffed at the amount of air and chakra in it before the boy releases a stream of wind that immediately took shape of a twister, and with another hand seal, he started to control the air currents with the palms of his hands, forming a large field of raging air currents and gusting winds, and the girl to breath a massive stream of intense whitish flames towards their enemies. Senpo, Futon, Kiryurambu/Katan, Gokameshitsu. Both wind and fire merged together, resulting in a massive widespread inferno. Arakuru Jigaki no Jutsu. The heat was unbearable. Many Sunanins and Kumonins tried to create several walls for protection. Doton, Doria Hiki/Sueton, Suijin Hiki. But it was not enough. Everyone was engulfed, and those who didn't were going to be frozen in shock for what would happen next. Literally, the battlefield dropped several degrees as everyone in that area shivered at the sudden change. Both Kumo and Suna's survivors went pale as they watched in shock the scorched ground around them freeze all over. No more than a second later, the winds picked up. You could see snowflakes already, but what was terrifying was all the ice formed out of thin air, and the ice blocks, containing bodies upon bodies of their enemies. Senpo, Hayatan Zetsuredo no Jutsu. Everyone was in shock at what just happened. It was almost instantly. 1 second was so hot that they couldn't breathe because of that combined jutsu, and after 2 seconds everything was frozen, and there was snow falling from the sky. Sighing in relied, Mikoto was about to congratulate Naruto when she saw him drop to one knee, heavily breathing, and all the markings he had were gone. So that was basically a power boost. Still, it's incredible. He could match my best katan technique with that futon of his. I'm going to rest. A voice in front of her snapped out of her thoughts. She instantly grabbed his unconscious body, not letting it drop to the cold ground. There was a loud cheering behind her, and she could guess what it was, but she didn't care. All she wanted right now was to go home and take a bath after fighting for so many hours and almost dying in the process if it wasn't for her father. But that wasn't going to happen anytime soon. You killed my brother! Everyone heard the loud scream, followed by a huge plume of smoke. Traces of blue fire could be seen inside of it. Roar! A loud roaring that shook the earth and shattered every single block of ice in pieces, including the bodies, and blowed the smoke away. Everyone gasped in shock and fear at the huge beast in front of them. Ennibi. Conclusion of Nami and aftermath. Nami no Kuni. Ennibi. The voice of their captain, Uchiha Kagami, broke them out of their shock, and a second later 4 familiar figures surrounded Mikoto and Naruto, who was still unconscious. The female Uchiha gazed over her father, Kagami, and her comrades and friends, Tsukumo, Kushina and Minato, standing proud and ready to face what was probably the biggest challenge of their lives up until now. The leader was the first to speak as he saw the Senju's condition. Miko-chan, take Naruto-san to the medical tent, as the things will only get uglier from now on. Mikoto wanted to protest because of the condition her father was in, but she remembered her crush that was on her lap and immediately grabbed him and left the area after a weak nod and a "be careful." Roar. The captain Uchiha was already relaying orders to his army to stay down and recover from the last battle, but as soon as he heard another roar and turned his gaze over the beast, his eyes widened as a huge amount of chakra was being gathered in front of the beast's mouth, as a dark purple sphere was getting bigger and bigger by the second, and everyone could feel the ridiculous amount of malevolent chakra condensed in it. By Jadama, the army started to tremble in fear as they watched in shock the now house-sized sphere being launched from its mouth, and it was at that moment they knew they certainly were going to die, as no doubt any of their jutsus were going to overpower or block that. But they still were going to try. As proud shinobis of Konoha, everyone steeled their gazes and went through the same chain of hand seals, If someone could watch, they would be amazed at how synchronized they were, before slamming their hands on the ground as thousands of earth walls emerged in front of them, creating several layers. They gritted their teeth and pushed whatever chakra they still had left, and prayed to gods that it was enough. Doton, Dorihiki, back to the group of 4, they watched in fascination and awe at the determination everyone was displaying. This is the will of fire. They knew this would not be enough, and they were proved right as the chakra-compressed sphere literally destroyed every single wall without slowing down, and Kushina was about to make use of her Fuinjutsu knowledge and create the best barrier she knew when a blonde-haired stepped in front of them with a weird customized kunai placed in front of both of his open hands in the ball's direction. "Minato, what are you doing?" Said man ignored the red-haired shouts as his icy blue eyes narrowed at the incoming attack already half through their defense. His mind was racing overdrive as he contemplated his chakra levels and what he was about to do, and a second later nodded to himself before speaking. "I'll take care of it, but my chakra will be depleted afterwards and will need some time to recover." Minato gave them a reassuring grin over his shoulder that made even Kagami crack a smile, though their concern was still visible as this was a life and death situation. Nevertheless, they nodded and stepped back a bit as the Namikaze started to go through his hand seals over the kunai just as the purplish ball destroyed the last defensive layer of earth. "Hope I can teleport such massive amount of chakra. Thank God there's several of my special kunais in the ocean that I used during the clash with Sunagaker. Though I still can't use it to teleport myself, I was able to figure out a way to direct whatever it is to another location." Jukuken Kekai, Hirashin Dorai. Several scrabblings and kanjis formed out of thin air in front of him, and just as the sphere was about to make contact with them, everyone gasped in shock and awe as what it seemed to be a barrier space technique wrapped the big compressed purplish ball and disappeared as if nothing was there. And then, silence. What seemed to be like minutes of silence as they were trying to figure out what had just happened. Even the Nibby stopped with the best incredulous catface it could muster. Were just a few seconds as a huge explosion rocketed through a specific location in the ocean, followed by a massive wave of water that washed over them. The Konoha army was thinking that this was actually an enemy trying to take them by surprise and used their years of experience and hard work to overpower the wave by gathering their chakra to stick to the ground and not let it drown them. Kagami, knowing this was some unknown jutsu made by Minato, immediately relayed his plan to the small group and shouting to the army back off so they could preserve more lives. "Listen, we can't fight head on the beast. So we need to play smart here. Kushina, prepare your Kekkai Genkai, you'll know what you need to do when the time comes. Mikoto, Tsukumo and I will distract it and restrict its movements. 2 or 3 seconds is all we need. Let's go." Kushina, Mikoto and Tsukumo nodded as Minato was still recovering from the amount of chakra he used on his last technique. The group of 4 shinobi steeled their gazes before Tsukumo went through a familiar sequence of hand seals before biting his thumb. Kuchios no Jutsu. A huge plume of smoke made Nibby narrow its heterochromatic eyes before the ground itself shook as a massive dark brown dog let out a loud roar, showing that he wasn't intimidated at all by the challenge in front of him. Not a second later, the dog's belly puffed before releasing a huge mud widespread wall towards the Biju. Doton, Doro Kakusenha, Mikoto and Kagami went through their own hand seals while inhaling a good amount of air before breathing a massive torrent of flames that took shape of a dragon and an enormous flamethrower respectively that combined with the mud wall. Katan, Carrier Enden / Katan, Gokameshitsu. Tsukumo had already finished his own chain, before generating 4 huge pillars of spinning wind around him and immediately directing it in front of him. Futon, Kamikaze. A humongous wall of earth fire widespread wall took tremendous speed as the wind combined with it towards Nibby, who narrowed its eyes angrily. "Don't be so sure of yourselves." Using its paws and tails, Nibby slammed those on the ground with such force that an earthquake was felt from miles away, but that was enough to destabilize the combined technique in front of him, making the jutsu explode halfway that shook the entire battlefield. Even the large dog had difficulties to keep his balance and protecting his summoner and his friends from the recoil. But that was all they needed. Just as soon as the smoke from the explosion vanished, several chains emerged from the ground beneath the Biju, encircling his body, rendering him from any moves. Kongo Fuza, Kaiosei Bandingu, a red-haired teenager who had been watching the whole clash, made herself known, but she had to grit her teeth as the beast was trying desperately to force itself free. Even though her Kekkai Genkai could theoretically tame or control a beast, just like what she was doing with her own Biju sealed inside of her, this was the first time she was using it outside of her mindscape against one of them, and even though she was not that exhausted since she was an Uzumaki and Kyuubi's Jinchuriki, this was draining her energy very quickly. And that same inexperience would cost them. "Don't underestimate me, humans." Letting out a loud roar that shook the entire battlefield, Nibby suddenly spit a small stream of blue fire towards Kushina that made her lose the concentration for a split of a second, but that was all the Biju needed before tensed his muscles and escaping the chains around his neck. Not a second later, the beast opened its mouth and, forcing his tails that still had 2 chains strapped to it, right on top of his head, the 2-tailed Biju poured massive amounts of demonic chakra as a huge purplish sphere took shape out of thin air, almost instantaneous. Everyone could tell and feel the similarities, but the big difference between the last and this one. This sphere has almost 20 times the power of the last one. The 4 of them had their eyes widened in shock and fear as they had no way out. Minato, watching this, immediately took a step forward but instantly regretted as his body failed him and dropped on the dog's head in front of the group. TSH, not now. Everyone was at loss of words as no one had any idea how to stop it. Tsukumo, Mikoto and Kagami knew they had no jutsu in their arsenal to counter it, and the latter being in the worst condition possible. Kushina was still forcing her chains to restrain the beast's movements, but her heavy breaths indicated that her stamina was running low. Minato was out of chakra and the dog had a look of realization and fear as well, so they concluded that the animal didn't have anything to block or redirecting it. They couldn't just move away, otherwise the army that was running away was behind them. They had to do something, but what? They snapped out of their thoughts as another loud roar and the shattering ground beneath the beast from sheer pressure of the Biju's technique was heard. Everyone hung their heads down as they knew what was going to happen just as the blue-flamed cat lunged a massive purplish sphere towards them at tremendous speed. Chobaijidama, Kagami, Tsukumo, Mikoto, Kushina, Minato and the dog's world slowed down as they reviewed all their lives up until now in a split of a second as the huge sphere was already halfway towards them. No one heard a pair of hands slamming on the ground behind them as they closed their eyes before a massive explosion was felt. Kuchios, Goju Rashomen, Byoom. The group of Konoha had the same thought running through their heads as they kept their eyes closed. Am I dead? But before anyone could process the fact that they didn't even felt any pain, even though that attack was supposed to make them simply disappear without feeling anything, a voice made themselves almost jump in shock. Almost, that's a huge cat there. Everyone heard the amount of amusement on that statement, and had to sweat drop at the comment before they opened their eyes and gasped in awe and shock at the 5 gates in front of them. Though 3 of them were destroyed and the 4th was a bit battered, they couldn't stop the sigh of relief that came out of their mouths before gazing over the newcomer. Mikoto immediately lunged towards the figure as moisture had already gathered on the side of her eyes. And Naruto-kun? The now revealed Naruto had an impassive face, but there was a small smile on it as he heard the amount of relief on how she called him. But he immediately narrowed his eyes at the chain Biju in front of them as the gates vanished in a plume of smoke after doing its job. We can talk later, we need to leave. I'm almost out of chakra just like you and I can sense 2 huge chakra signatures on their way here, no doubt reinforcements. Kushina, the red hair, nodded knowing what he was asking her to do before she tensed her body, and a second later, more chains emerged from the ground and restrained any movement from the beast. She was breathing hard as this was taking a huge toll on her body. That's why she didn't even notice Naruto finish a sequence of hand seals and murmuring the next technique. Hayatan, Kuki Toketsu. It took a few seconds, and if the ragged breaths Naruto was letting out was any indicator, he was concentrating hard on his jutsu, and just as they were about to tell him to stop whatever he was doing, the air around them dropped several degrees and everyone had their jaws on the ground as the area around Nibi started to, literally, freeze. They could feel the cold temperature it was giving off as a small cold mist gathered around the beast before its paws, tails followed almost by its whole body froze. The flames of its body seemed to make it harder, as they saw the blocks of ice melting bit by bit. They were snapped out of their thoughts by a weak but still commanding voice. We need to take this chance and leave now, otherwise whoever is coming will capture us easily. And before he could finish, his body gave out and he dropped to his knees. He was breathing hard as his jutsu depleted a good amount of his remaining chakra. His body and chakra reserves didn't recover enough to sustain such type of technique to be used on such large scale, and this was not taking into account the flames the Biju was covered in. That made even more difficult to freeze, even if it just for a few seconds. The group didn't need to be said twice as Tsukumo immediately told his summon to return back to their tent where their army was probably arriving. The last thing they saw was the blue flames of the beast retracing to its Jinchuriki's body, who immediately dropped unconscious on the ground, and 2 well-built men, one of them being covered in black lightning and the other blue lightning, before the dog made a huge leap back to their post. Time skip. Nami no Kuni's borders medical tent. It's been a few hours since they escaped the Biju, and for almost the 10th time, they sighed in relief. They had been at the death's doorstep multiple times, but it was during the fight with the massive beast that they knew they had just escaped Shinigami. All thanks to one boy, Senju Naruto. Namake's Minato had never been so grateful that he asked the youngest Senju to help him with his Jukuken ninjutsu, Hiration. He still wasn't able to teleport himself to his special kunais though. He already deciphered what Naruto meant when he asked him how he could teleport himself without it giving him secondary effects on his body. Don't force yourself. Go with the flow. That part was easy, but Minato knew that his body wasn't still fast enough to be able to do such thing. His body would immediately destroy itself from the inside out, and he would probably missing a few limbs. So while he built his body for speed, he and Naruto started to try and come up with ideas for other uses instead of just teleport themselves, and the answer came up almost instantaneous. After all, they were genius, a space-time barrier. He certainly had to thank Naruto once again for helping him being able to protect his comrades at the last second. He would never in a million years guess that he would be in this situation. At first he thought that the young Senju would be a pain in the ass, just like Fugaku, so he didn't trust him at the beginning, an arrogant prick, simple as that. But those thoughts stopped after doing some missions together when the Namikaze came back from his training trip with Jiraiya. They had quite a few spars, and although Naruto won the majority, he never boasted about it. It wasn't too long before they became best friends, even if the 15-year-old teen didn't give away many emotions, but he could tell by his dark red eyes. And so, using their several ingenious ideas, they started to create and recreate many jutsus and teaching it to each other. "Yo, sunshine." A voice broke him out of his thoughts, and he was a bit surprised by the person that was occupying his thoughts standing right in front of him, and he didn't even sense him. Nevertheless, he got a tick mark on his forehead for those stupid nicknames he always come up with. "Sup, Naruto-kun. Did something come up?" "Yes, we will be returning to Konoha tomorrow. Nami no Kuni has surrendered to our force and have expressed their wishes to form an alliance with us. Although they are not giving us a boost in military force, their rare minerals will be very welcome to produce our weapons and other stuff." It wasn't Naruto who replied. A pair of blood-red eyes with his arms crossed and lining on the wall gazed over them. Naruto didn't show any reactions indicating that he already knew, though. Minato had a second vein comically throbbing his forehead at yet another presence he couldn't sense. The Namikaze hummed a bit at the news, before replying what happened to the Nibi's Jinchuriki. It was Kushina this time that replied, though. This time Minato had already sensed her dense chakra. The rescuers probably took her back. If what Naruto-kun said was right, one of the mans was the Sandaime Reikage. Our sensory division reported that they had fallen back along with the small platoon they brought with them. The black-haired Senju held an impassive face, though. Inwardly his mind was racing through some of his own agenda. "I've marked Ichibi's Jinchuriki, so it will be not that difficult to extract him as soon as I solve the problem to extract a Biju without killing its host. Though, it's proving to be a troublesome task." He was snapped out of his thoughts as he saw the several eyes gazing over him with curious, concerned and angry looks. His sweat dropped. "Huh, did you say something?" Everyone's face faltered and a certain gray-haired adult had his eyebrow furiously twitching, but he restrained himself to lash out on his student's ignorance. Kagami coughed to get their attention. "Mikoto-chan and Naruto-san will be heading to Konoha tonight to relay everything we know so far and report the successful mission in detail." "Understood?" Kushina narrowed her eyes a bit at the almost unnoticed spark Mikoto's charcoal eyes gave, hearing that, but reluctantly nodded, as well as Minato. Sakumo ruffled his apprentice's hair, gaining a small glare much to his amusement, and patted his back, mouthing a low "I'm proud of you" that no one except for Naruto heard. The Senju let out a small smile grace his lips before exiting the tent along with the Uchiha's heiress to pack their own stuff before heading towards the village. Time skip. Naruto and Mikoto were already on their way. The latter kept stealing glances at the former, who had his impassive face in place, though he was aware of said glances. The Uchiha huffed in annoyance and started, "Thank you for saving us." The black-haired boy raised an eyebrow at that, before replying, "No problem. I'm not letting any comrade die to those scums, much less if it was you. Nevertheless, I can already see how pointless a war is." Hearing this, the High no Megami looked away with a small blush at his words before taking the subject she was looking for and spoke. "I agree, this war is pointless. Seeing so many people from both sides die just like that, I feel like I don't want to waste my time in anger, regrets, worries, and grudges. The life of a shinobi is too short to be unhappy. With this in mind, I decided that I don't want to be an option in your life, I want to become the choice of your life." Naruto's eyes widened at the last and almost unheard statement, and before he knew, Mikoto had thrust him onto some random tree. Blood-red three Tomo eyes met dark red eyes as their lips were inching closer. Meanwhile, Iwagakure no Sato Tsuchikage's office. Ryotenbin no Inoki, the Sandaime Tsuchikage, was currently going through some reports personally sent by the Reikage. It wasn't public knowledge, or so that was what he thought, that both villages made in secret alliance to take down and conquer elemental nations, though only higher-ups in their respective villages knew about this. They would be using Sunagakure as a pawn, and that chance came when Reikage had received a scroll to aid them in taking over Nami no Kuni. He didn't know what the Kazekage was thinking, but asking a foreign nation that had no ties with for an alliance, even if it was just temporary, was basically an invitation to do as he pleased with them. But sometimes desperation calls for desperate moves. Fools. Nevertheless, this new Senju figure that just came out of nowhere a year ago been causing more trouble than what it was worth. To defeat a squad which had a Jinchuriki included plus the slaughter that occurred afterwards, and again defeating a Biju, was no small feat that even he, the Tsuchikage, didn't know he was capable of. They needed to put him down. The question was how. He hummed a bit in thought, and an idea hit him as an evil grin threatened to split his face. Maybe the Kazekage still has some uses. Time skip. Kanahigakure no Satan Council Room. Been roughly 2 weeks since Naruto and Mikoto reported everything to Sarutobi Hiruzen. He was kinda shocked when they reported that they had to fight a Biju, and thanked Kami that his army avoided a massacre if certain people weren't there at the time. Nevertheless, he was grateful that they had now acquired full support from the daimyo of Nami no Kuni, and so he, along with the Jounin commander and other important figures, started the next step of the plan. Though, recent rumors coupled with some reports made them stop in their tracks. The Sandaime Hokage gazed over everyone in the room, clan heads, advisors and important figures of the war that were currently engaging in a small chat, and finally decided to speak. "Alright. Let's get to the real point of this meeting. Jiraiya's spy network reported a small platoon from Sunagakure is moving towards Takigakure. The one leading this mission is the Sandaime Kazekage. One of the advisors, Danzo Shimura, was the one who asked the obvious question, what are their intentions? Hiruzen blowed some smoke from his mouth before gripping the pipe and almost cracking it as he spoke. They plan to make it a base of operations and destroy the loyalty they have to Konoha. With Kazekage in their midst, this will be possible as they don't have any high-caliber shinobi to take him head-on. The Jinchuriki is still far from getting his Biju under control. This move was expected, though the Kazekage coming along wasn't. It was the Jounin commander, Shirkunara, who made his presence known troublesome. This means he won't get any rest anytime soon. Sandaime and Danzo smirked at that before the former replied, indeed. Time skip. Takigekyo knows Sato borders. Sandaime Kazekage, Ryuziai, known from the mastery over his Kekiai Genkai, Satetsu, was leading a small but his strongest platoon of 100 shinobis. He was currently reviewing his plan with two of his most trusted mans and former teammates. Paki, the Shikuden user, and Chio, a Kagutsu and poison master. Their plan was quite simple as from his spies Takigekyo. Although they currently had a strong Biju in their ranks, they also knew that they had no experience or amount of power to defend themselves of an attack from one of the Great Five. And so, in an act of desperation, they decided to invade before their allies, Konoha, could take notice of their plans. What they and the other nations didn't know was how effective Jiraiya's spy network was, and soon, the whole world would know one of the main reasons for Konoha being always a step ahead of them and acknowledge the Gama Sennin as a spy master, and not just by his prowess on the battlefield. And soon enough, Ryusei and his teammates heard explosions all over their camp. As they rushed out of the tent, their eyes widened in shock at the sight in front of them. What was a simple camp that had little over 100 shinobis gathered was painted in blood-red colors filled with craters and smoke. Ryusei narrowed his eyes at the four figures on the side, completely ignoring the limping and screaming survivors that managed to escape death. An almost evil voice was heard, "Fufufu, that's quite a sight, Naruto-kun." There was no reply, much to the amusement of the person that spoke, as the smoke cleared and Chio along with Paki widened his eyes at the appearance of Gama Sennin, Hibi Sennin, Namakuji Sennin and Taka Sennin. The Sandaime Kazekage kept his stoic face in place. It was the former and Kagutsu mistress that broke the silence. Orochimaru, Jiraiya, Senju Tsunade and Senju Naruto. The Shikuten user narrowed his eyes as a question surged in his mind. How did you know? It was the gallant, spiky white-haired man that answered. Oh ho now, that's a good question, isn't it? Orochimaru almost smirked but hid it in time before continuing. Now, they are about to die. So it doesn't really matter. Jiraiya's spy network has its advantages. Kazekage narrowed his eyes at that tad bit of information but smirked as his senses detected three newcomers taking notice of the small flicker in the Senju's eyes. So, he's a sensor and a good one too. As he finished that train of thoughts, the four Konohanins had to jump backwards as a strong torrent of water crushed the ground where they were standing just moments ago. Suetun, Mizurapa. Jiraiya widened his eyes at the familiar but now deeper voice, and a frown displayed on his face as soon as he gazed over the attackers. It's been a while, Jiraiya-sensei. Orochimaru and Tsunade's reaction was a slightly widening in their eyes as their minds raced at the familiar but now more mature faces. Naruto kept his impassive face, but there was a small twitch on his hands as he took notice of one of the figure's visible eye. It was the Gama Sennin who broke out of his shock, and his eyes hardened before replying. Yahiko, Nagato and Konan, borders of Takigekyo no Sato. Tsunade was the one who happened to break the staring contest. Shifting her head towards Jiraiya, she asked the same question rolling in everyone's mind. Jiraiya, who are they and why do they look so familiar? The Gama Sennin grimaced a bit at remembering the days he shared with the three figures in front of him, before replying. It was just after the Dainiji Nikai Taisen, we ran into three childs. Tsunade and Orochimaru both widened their eyes as the memories finally hit them. I trained them for a few months and then left them as soon as I deemed them strong enough to hold themselves off in this cursed world. But I heard from my toads that they died. How is this possible? Being the leader from the three since the beginning of their adventure, Yahiko took a step forward and finally recounted the events that happened. Indeed, that's how you met us. After that, we started to seek out a village to establish ourselves as we knew, though strongers, we weren't able to hold our own long enough as a bounty hunters. We gathered a group, we recruited 5 more ninjas, don't really remember how many of them were, probably 10 in total, but it doesn't matter at this point, to our group and each of us defended each other's backs. Until we finally come across a man. Flashback. Amigekyo no Sato borders. I've been hearing rumors about this little group protecting the lives of innocents, and doing some dangerous missions for the small villages all across the elemental nations. I admit I got myself interested and we finally meet Akatsuki, a rather muscular man of above average height, with long blonde hair reaching down to his back and a prominent scar on his right cheek. His attire consisted of a loose wetsuit-like outfit typical of his village, accented by bandages wrapped around his wrists and lower legs, a flak jacket with swirls on the chest plate, standard shinobi sandals and a dark cloak that reached down below his waist. Underneath this wetsuit he donned a dark, short-sleeved, midriff shirt which exposed his lower abdomen. Surrounding him was a whole army around 100 battle-ready Amigekyo shinobis. His eyes shifted to the orange-haired boy who took a step forward. He narrowed his eyes at the determination and posture this man held. He gave an unconscious nod of approval. He heard him speak. Hanzo Dano, my name is Yahiko, the current leader of Akatsuki. I'm sure you are wondering why we approached so boldly to the borders of your country. A nod was his response that the man was indeed listening and waiting for him to continue. I wish for you to take into consideration our group joining the shinobi ranks of Amigakure. Hanzo widened his eyes at the sudden request. He wasn't expecting this for sure. He analyzed the little group one by one. Every single one of them had that look in their eyes that he has always appreciated. They knew the pain and wanted to change the world. His eyes hardened, looking over the leader. Fine. Follow me. Flashback end. We trained intensively under Hanzo-sama's supervision. After a while we started to take missions after missions until now. Hanzo actually thought about to betray us after one of the higher-ups from Konoha proposed him a deal, but, in the end, he discovered the reasons underneath that offer and sent him pack away back to Konoha. We vowed ourselves to destroy your village since then, a corrupt village if you want my opinion, even though we don't really know the reasons behind that plot to kill us. You can't stop us now. We have the advantage. As he said this, he, Nagato and Konan steeled their gazes at their opponents and the up-and-coming battle. Naruto, who kept quiet during all the story, had his mind racing. He still had his eyes on the unnerving power that the red-haired boy's purple eyes were emitting. No doubt that's the legendary Rinnegan. His chakra feels somehow familiar to Mitoba-chan and Kushina-chan and Uzumaki? Interesting. They were clearly at disadvantage. 6-on-3, where one of them was the Kazekage and the other held the most powerful Dijutsu known to the world. His father's notes spoke highly about them, though there wasn't any worth notes about its abilities. This was troubling but exciting. Jiraiya, what are their abilities? Since you're the one who trained them, you must have some idea, said Sannin. Turned his gaze towards his black-haired friend. Releasing a sigh, he answered. Well, it's been a few years since I trained them, Naruto, but Konan there has the ability to control paper. She has an high control over it, and her chakra. Yahiko had a strong affinity to Suetun, though not as strong as yours. He has the strongest determination out all of them. Don't underestimate him. Nagato, he displayed an aptitude to all 5 affinities. That probably comes with his Dijutsu. And that's really it. Their teamwork is impeccable and it only improved with the years. The male Senju's mind started to work overdrive, going over thousands of plans over few seconds. He clicked his teeth and took a step forward. We need to separate them. He made a single hand seal. Moisture in the air started to gather. Jiraiya, take on Yahiko and Konan. Orochimaru, you take on the Sunigekyo shinobis with Tsunade. Make out a plan between yourselves when you battle them. I'll get the Rinnegan user. Ninpo, Kirigakyo no Jutsu, hiding in mist technique. As he finished relaying orders, a condensed and thick mist spread around the entire area. The mist was strong, and it had extended to an abnormally amount of distance. Everyone knew why. Futon won't disrupt the mist, TSH. This guy is strong, to be able to create such strong mist out of nowhere. Their senses were overwhelmed as they tried to pick up their opponent's chakra, but the dense and chakra-laced mist stopped them. Nagato strained his Rinnegan, able to pick up something that made his blood run cold before shouting, Jump, Suetun, Suiryo Senrenden, Water Release, Water Dragon Triple Step. With the help from the mist, 3 huge dragon waters materialized in the air almost in an instant. 3 large pair of glowing yellow eyes was the only thing the Rinnegan saw before he urgently shouted to his companions and allies before the dragon roared and impacted on the ground where they were standing. An explosion of water followed the impact, almost turning the whole field into an ocean if it wasn't for it being so large and open. The Konoha Sannin leapt towards their designed opponents with Naruto clones instructions, otherwise they would just randomly look out for them within the dense mist. Naruto versus Nagato. Nagato was actually worried for his friends, as in one second he was standing beside them, and in the other, he was alone. What frightened him was the fact that not even his Rinnegan could see through this mist. I can't even sense them. This chakra, that's it. This mist is made out of chakra. He extended his arms forward. An invisible layer materialized around him, and if you look closer, you could see the mist being sucked into it. Fujitsu Kyuin, blocking technique absorption seal. Naruto saw the barrier-like around Nagato, and immediately narrowed his eyes as he felt his chakra reserves draining a little too quick for his likings and instantly knew what was happening. He can absorb chakra-based techniques, so that means some of my ninjutsus is not an option. The others are already miles away from here on their respective battles, so he clicked his tongue, the mist starting to disperse over the next few seconds as he stopped sustaining chakra to his technique. He was right in front of the red-haired boy, analyzing his figure as the layer that was encircling his body disappeared. Naruto smirked. In a swift motion, lightning exploded from the hilt he grabbed from his waist. He was already in front of the Rinnegan user, who had his eyes widened at the pure speed of his opponent. He saw the lightning coming from the hilt. Idiot, it's useless. Fujitsu Kyuin. The same barrier-like layer of chakra materialized in front of his hands, meeting the thrust made by his opponent. Raijin no Ken, Shizen Nakanden, Sword of the Thunder God, natural electrocution. But his eyes immediately turned into one of shock and fear as the lightning ignored the barrier and was thrust upon his stomach. Electricity jolted his whole body, making it numb for a few seconds. His whole body was lifted as the sparks of lighting surrounded his being. His expression of disbelief meeting the smirking and knowing of Naruto, he gasped out in a weak and trembling voice. How? Naruto slid the blade out, placing the hilt again on the side of his waist. the electricity disappearing altogether, he answered few seconds later. Raijin no Ken is not your normal sword. The lighting you saw was not made out of my chakra. Realization hit Nagato, his voice still trembling, but he managed to let out a few words. And naturally lightning. Correct, that's why this sword is considered a legendary artifact. Now, will you get serious? Naruto turned around, gazing over at certain location. Nagato? The body behind Naruto cracked and slowly turned into mud. A figure emerged from the ground where Naruto was looking. A serious and somewhat anxious expression on his face. So, you knew all along, alright, you'll get the full might of the Rinnegan and you'll die. Naruto let out a smirk grace his lips. Let's hope you don't trip on your own steps too soon in our dance. Sometime later, there was only one word that someone, if able, could describe the battlefield around them: destruction. At a certain point, both parties had grouped again as none of them could get the upper hand in their respective battles. Though, Orochimaru was able to kill the Shikuten user when he underestimated his strength and devious mind. Nagato's clothes were ragged, he was missing many parts of his outfit, he was dangerously low on chakra. Yahiko was the same, and Konan was only a little bit roughed up since she was more like a support, and the orange-haired had always protected her. The Kazekage was in the best state out of the now 5 members there. Chio was low on chakra and many of her puppets were destroyed and lying down all over the battlefield. Orochimaru was breathing hard but still had a sickening smile on his features. He had many times involuntarily licked his lips as he fought the Jiten and Shikuten user, the latter dying and letting his guard down and paying it with his life against an experienced Sannin. He had never felt such excitement over all this Kekkai Genkais, such prowess if trained to their limit. He shivered at the thought of possessing something similar. Maybe he could replicate some of those bloodlines that he saw during the Second Ninja World War. He needed to train and experiment. Remember that, in the canon, he was a fanboy of everything that related to immortality, not really Kekkai Genkais, otherwise he would be able to use Mokuton for example, in my opinion, if he was able to successfully experiment on Yamato and Danzo, at a certain point. Tsunade was also breathing heavily. She took some hits from Chiyo's puppets which contained deathly poison. Well, deathly to a normal ninja. She wasn't considered the best medic in the whole elemental nations for nothing, and eventually she overcame her opponent's tricky attacks and dominated her battle. Since then, Jiraiya was better than his former teammates. He had way more experience than his former 2 students, and many times during the battle, he could have killed them both, but every time he went for the finishing blow, he would get flashbacks from the older days. His heart wasn't that cold. He didn't go all out, otherwise he knew they wouldn't have a chance against him even if they have indeed grown stronger over the years. Out of all 3, Naruto was surprisingly in the best state. They chalked it up to his amazing Rinnegan abilities coupled with his medical knowledge or being a monster in the battlefield. The male Senju was actually impressed with the Rinnegan user. During the whole battle he discovered many of its abilities. It astounded him the versatility of the legendary Dijutsu. If being able to use all 5 affinities with little effort was mind-blowing, the fact that he also possessed what he concluded to be the 6th affinity, otherwise known as to being able to manipulate the gravity itself, got his jaws dropped on the floor despite his impressive control of emotions. This will be the only battle I will cover though, it will be just a small part. This is a Naruto-centered FIC. Though if you want, I can write the other battles as well. Flashback. Uzumaki Nagato always preached for his large reserves of chakra, making him able to use many high-level ninjutsus during a battle. But this was just ridiculous. He knew the Senju's history, but he never thought possible that there would another member with such density and large reserves of chakra being born. It dwarfed his own, on both levels. It was incomprehensible as best. He grunted as he felt the wind knocked out of his lungs as another punch met his stomach. He already knew better than use his barrier to absorb any chakra-based jutsus. Every single one of his opponent's jutsus had just too much chakra and would give the black-haired the opening he needed to kill him. Nagato was sent backwards from the impact but immediately shifted his body and repositioned himself, his Rinnegan locking on his opponent, detecting another spike of chakra. Naruto went through a couple of hand seals and instantly the atmosphere around them grew cold. Nagato noticed this but widened his eyes in surprise as his feet were suddenly trapped to the ground, and then he remembered all the Suiton techniques his opponent used weren't targeted at him, but Hayatan Bakusai Hyosho, Ice Release, Blasting Ice Crystal. Indeed, it makes way easier for me to freeze anything in an instant if there's water around. If I just used this jutsu, you would have noticed it and escaped, as it takes a little bit of time and with your eyes, but the ground having sucked dry all that water not to the point to turn mud, gave me the advantage. Naruto formed another couple of hand seals as he saw the chunks of ice at his opponent's feet grow, almost freezing his whole body. Hayatan Hyogakuho, Ice Release, Ice Peak Crumbling. Thin spikes of ice emerged from the ground, ready to impale his opponent all over his body. Nagato strained his Rinnegan again. Naruto immediately detected the huge spike of chakra and jumped out of the way. He still had time to heard his enemy murmuring the technique. Shinra Tensei. The effects were instantaneous. In a blast, everything around him was sent the opposite way, the ice at his feet destroyed along with the spikes that were targeting him. A medium-sized crater and Nagato being on its center made Naruto widen his eyes in a rare display of emotions before he was suddenly jerked to his opponent at a dangerous speed. It was like he couldn't make his body stop. It's over, Bansho Tenin. Naruto saw Nagato producing a weird black rod from his sleeves and immediately knew the dangers of it. He couldn't stop his body, so he went to action, and with a single hand seal, the Senju made the atmosphere around him drop drastically, and not a single second later, seeing the rod ready to impale him, Naruto literally froze the air surrounding him and consequently, his opponent who was but a meter away. Hayatan, Hyogandoma. Cracks spread all over the ice covering Naruto's body before, without any warning, exploded in a beautiful shower of ice shards, the unscathed body of Naruto now visible, though there was an expression of surprise all over his features as he saw Nagato, with some difficulty, drain the chakra from within the ice, before it too as well broke. Rinnegan gives him the ability to control gravity itself? He can pull and push as he desires, but it seems it takes a good chunk of his chakra to do it. Guess he hasn't mastered it yet. Nagato too was analyzing his opponent with critical eye. No one has ever pushed him so hard. He could feel his opponent wasn't even going all out, and his chakra levels were already low from the usage of two jutsus he hadn't the experience of using simultaneously. He had tried to make an all-in, but it seems it didn't work, and he was going to pay for that mistake as he could feel the strain and side effects on his body from the jutsus. His level of mastery in ninjutsu is a pain in the ass. What's scarier is that he's still holding back. A spike of chakra snapped him out of his thoughts. His body trembled at the insane amount he was feeling. It didn't even take a sensor to feel that. He let out an emotion he hasn't felt since his parents' death, as a dome of dark blue with traces of purplish color chakra exploded from Naruto. Suetun, Gekkaridan. A massive and powerful vortex of water materialized in the air, both with the puddles of water on the ground and the moisture in the air. The sheer size of the vortex, more like tornado, was something that made Nagato's blood run cold. His body was still recovering from the chakra exhaustion. He didn't even notice Naruto bringing his right arm forth in his direction as his left hand blurred through one-handed seals. The vortex obeying its command as it took phenomenal speeds towards the red-haired. But it wasn't over as Naruto finished the hand seals. He started to generate yellow lightning from his left hand before thrusting it towards his target. It took shape of a falcon as it chirped loudly before combining itself with the torrent of water. Its power increasing even more as yellow lightning was now visible around the powerful rotating vortex who was now a few meters from Nagato. Raitun, Taka Maikazuchi. Nagato closed his eyes. The more he tried to force his body to move, the more pain he felt on his muscles. He didn't heard or felt a pair of slamming hands on the ground, another pair of hands clapping, nor many papers encircling his whole body. Setetsu Renzen, Suetun, Suijin Hiki, Kami no Kabe. A massive explosion shook the entire battlefield. Naruto, who had sensed the newcomer's priory, let out a small smirk as even with all those shields and walls, it wasn't enough though, it did successfully somewhat protected their friend. Proof of that was the limping Nagato, who was supporting himself on his orange-haired friend to be able to stand up. Blood dripping off of his wounds, he could see some broken bones after the impact of the powerful vortex. Flashback end. Senju. Naruto crossed his arms over his chest. He wasn't the only one who knew which side was winning if the grimaces on his opponent's faces was any indication. He was about to order his fellow Sannin when his sensors picked up on multiple signatures. He inwardly growled, "We need to get out of here. The reinforcements are coming, and one of them is Kuchios, Ibius." A massive explosion of white smoke interrupted his orders, as in huge and all too familiar, at least to the three Sannin, Salamander growled to his enemies. A figure on the top of its head narrowed his eyes at the state of his shinobis. The leader of Amigekyo no Sato, Hanzo. Simultaneously, Orochimaru, Tsunade, and Jiraiya paled. They would never say it out loud, but their biggest fear has always been this man and his summoning. They still had nightmares to this day on the humiliating defeat at this man's hands. He was even holding back because they had picked his interest, and so he let them go flee with a new title. They were cheered when they got back to the village, but inwardly, they were angry at being given mercy and vowed to, one day, pay him back. But today was not the day. They had already expended themselves and wasted too much chakra on their respective battles, plus there was an army incoming as well. Not forgetting the Kazekage that was still in front of them supporting Nawa and Sane Grin. Jiraiya was the first of the three to snap out of his thoughts. He spoke directly to Naruto, who was now standing still with his arms clapped. The urgency in his tone was not missed by anyone. "We need a distraction to fool so many shinobis." Everyone tensed, and it was not from the new army of 200 Amigekyo shinobis arriving in the clearing, but from the visible and mind-blowing presence that one figure was transmitting. Dark red markings spread around and under Naruto's eyes, well as in the middle of his forehead, which took shape of a circle. The peaceful aura he was emitting was not lost from the Sannin who were closer to him. Jiraiya widened his eyes at the familiar technique. He mastered it? "I can't believe Senjutsu." Hanzo narrowed his eyes at the black-haired boy who took a step forward, giving the command to his army with a calm voice. "Attack." Naruto gave a slight nod to his comrades over his shoulder before his cheeks bulged. "Senpo, Shimagakure no Jutsu." The Senju breathed a massive mist from his mouth, and it didn't take long to reach the marching army who, as soon as it spread over them, it gave them chills all over their spine. Everyone right there and then noticed that it wasn't a normal mist but a cloudy frost, as the temperature had just reduced to the freezing point. But he wasn't finished. You see, the cloudy frost was just for delay, and low their confidence as well as their reaction to what would happen next. This will take out everyone that is caught, no questions asked. And that same technique was going to give him the first of many titles that would make him feared all across the elemental nations. Senpo, his hands were a blur, not that anyone could see as the thick and cloudy mist was covering the whole field, covering his presence by any means. He finished the last seal. Hakaidakina Erasure no Saisen, Senjutsu, destructive storm production. All around the field, the mist that was covering the whole area started to gather, making it even more denser than what it was. Dark clouds covered the sky, or more specifically, thunderclouds. Hanzo, the Kazekage, and everyone that didn't march right ahead, and those were barely 20 of 200, widened their eyes in shock and fear. They didn't need to be said to escape, because as soon as the former and the other saw it and realization hit them, they immediately tried to put as much distance as possible. And that was going back where they came from. Zwap! A natural thunderbolt that almost seemed to be guided hit the very core of the mist before a huge vortex of water, lightning powered by the winds that increased during the whole process, literally, devastated the whole battlefield. No one that got hit by the first bits of the cloudy frost got any mercy or time to react before their whole bodies were exploded under the insane pressure of the storm vortex. None of the 182 out of 200, not including Hanzo, the Kazekage, Nagato, Yahiko, and Konan, survived. Away from the storm, a proud figure looked over the storm he literally produced, on the top of his falcon's head, Garuga. He was exhausted, his Senjutsu chakra had already been drained. The whole purpose of it was to give him the ability to create the thunderclouds under a clear sky and generate enough power for the natural lightning that the thunderclouds would produce, make the destruction that he was now watching. He didn't like killing, but whoever came against his family would be swiftly dealt with. None would escape his wrath. He knew he was basically painting a huge target on his head, but that didn't make him any bit anxious, as he knew his current strength was more than enough and the potential he had was almost as limitless as the ocean. He would make them fear the Senju again. He promised to make them feel the same pain as he felt when he lost his role model, sensei, and more importantly, father. And then, he would finally relax. Time skip. It was barely a week since the world shook at the power of one man. Not literally, but everyone now knew that they should take easy steps and even then, plan, if they wished to mess with Konoha. The rumors quickly spread all over the continent. The ability to create storms was out of their realm. Well, that was what they had believed before they heard from a believable source. On that day, the future generations would know, Konoha Sure no Erasure was born, the man who created a storm himself. The event that was the massacre of hundreds of Amigakure shinobis would be known as the Kaimamire no Erasure Sakibi, Bloody Storm's Cry. Hokage's office. Sarutobi Hiruzen kept a stoic face while reading the reports from his former students and sensei's son. Inwardly, however, he was anything but. What he heard, what he was reading, was just too much for his old heart. Obviously, he was impressed, and being the Hokage, he was happy that the mission was a success. Takigakure was safe and sound. The alliance was strengthened due to the amazing feats that occurred during it. But while he knew he should be ecstatic about the performance, his pacifism was all but happy. Since the beginning he wanted to avoid the bloodshed that was the war. Unfortunately, the other Kages didn't understand the meaning of it. It seemed the road to achieve the long-awaited peace was way longer and harder than he thought. What would they gain with this? Nothing. Lives being sent to the horrors of war, forfeited like mere ants. The same could not be said about Danzo. The man was probably drooling at the thought of Senju Naruto. Senju Naruto, like father, like son, both beasts in the battlefield. Insane creators of mind-blowing techniques. Mind-boggling genius in their own right. Guardians of their family. No, the son was surpassing his father. No, he already has. Sandaime Hokage, Shinobi no Kami, released a sigh. Finally stealing his gaze, in a commanding voice, he gave the final orders directed to the shinobis in front of him. Prepare yourselves, because in a month, you will be invading Sunagakure and assassinate the Sandaime Kazekage. Hataki Sakumo and Uchiha Mikoto answered in unison. Hi, Hokage-sama. The three of them looked over the figure lining up to the wall. An impassive face met their gazes. Let's go. As soon as those words left his mouth, his whole body was covered in a vortex of water. Traces of lightning surrounded before he simply vanished from the room. A small breeze met their bodies, sending a shiver down their spine. The same thought went through their minds. A simple assassination mission will turn into a bloodbath. I can already feel it. 40 days later, Kumogakure no Sato, a Sandaime Reikage, was known to be a man that preferred power over brains just like Shodaime and Nidaime, but differently from his ancestors, he never disregarded any type of knowledge as useless. So it wasn't overall surprising that he actually held a good amount of respect towards the new rising threat that was Senju Naruto. His hand absently ran over a scar inflicted on him on the shoulder by the Nidaime Hokage, Senju Tobirama. Even with his abnormal physical prowess, the same scar didn't disappear over the years, a proof of the deceased Senju's power. Gazing over the bingo book once again, his eyes landed on the picture of the young Senju. A feeling of dread washed over him looking at those dark red eyes which he noticed looked very similarly to his deceased rival's ones. He shook his head, reading the information out loud. Bingo book number 21 entry. Name, Senju Naruto. Moniker, Sure no Erasure. Age 15. Affiliation, Kanahegakure no Sato. Rank, high. Relations, unknown parents. Senju clan and probably Yuki clan. Kekei Genkai Hayatan. Known elements: high affinity towards Suiton, Raiton and Futon. Low affinity towards Doton. Description: 5 feet 4 inches height, pale skin, spiky black-haired, 2 bangs framing the sides of his face, dark red eyes and 3 dark red birthmark lines on his face. Midnight blue flakest, black ANBU pants as well as shinobi sandals, a black, high collar, cloak with kanji for Taka Sanin embedded on the back. Bounty: death or alive, 15,000,000 Suna, approach with caution. Death or alive, 10 million aim, approach with caution. He hummed and thought, dark red eyes, the exact same birthmarks as Tobirama, a direct relative? I would have already known if he had a son, and the spies we had in Konoha had reported nothing of sorts. So, who are you, Senju Naruto? The Raikage knew Konoha had gained another powerhouse in their ranks. His achievements in the battle for Nami no Kuni were proof of that, and more proof that he was on his way to be able to battle a whole army by himself. And he could count the number of shinobis that could take on armies by themselves just with his fingers. A random thought went through his mind. Did that young Senju held any grudge towards his village for being responsible towards Tobirama's death? In that moment, a shiver went down his spine. Whatever. Nevertheless, he was actually curious to know what his fellow Kages were thinking about this matter. Like him, they should know when such skilled and talented young shinobi that survived an encounter with a Biju, even if it was only Nibi, the Kazekage and Sancho no Hanzo. No, he didn't just survive, he had looked them in the eyes and disregarded their past achievements, as if they were equals. And in Nibi's case, defeating her. Such confidence was something that came with the self-conscious that someone knew he or she could hold their ground and maybe defeat them. And that was troubling. I released a sigh of frustration. He was getting old and couldn't wait to pass on the title to his successor, his son. But that was only to be in a few more years. The brat was still too arrogant, and still needed the right training to manage a whole village. He had to prove himself in the war that was already reaching his village that he indeed deserved his father's legacy, Kumogakure no Sato. For now, he would wait. Wait for the next step. The battle for Nami no Kuni was a huge blow, and his military mind screamed to him to take the chance and make a direct approach on Suna, Aim or Konoha, since they lost many shinobis in the field, mainly the former, but he knew that a strategic move would be better than making a rash decision. So, for now, he would wait. Iwagakure no Sato. Ryotenda no Inoki was a simple man, well, at least in his modest opinion. He held his master's teachings in high regards, such as the fact that Iwagakure always comes first, and that he should resort to anything so that his village can strive, even using any of his villagers as a tool. Many would think that he was a selfish bastard, but if you really thought about the matter, he was just defending his home, his family, while making it even better as time goes on. Right now, he held the recent updated bingo book, reading the information of 2 Konoha shinobis that were getting a lot of fame from their achievements in this early time of war. Namikaze Minato and Senju Naruto. The latter being from such a clan it was actually reasonable, but the former was one of those rare cases where a prodigy is born. The intellect, skill, and mainly his speed was something out of this world, and the jutsu the rumors said that he used to redirect a fucking Baijudama was mind-blowing. He knew what he had to do. It was simple, really, just like the man he was. Erase Minato and Naruto from this world. The Sandaime Tsuchikage was also cunning, very cunning. Didn't you know that too? He wouldn't directly attack them. Oh no, there were other ways to make them suffer greater pain like no other, such as if something was to happen with their relatives or precious people. In his mind, these youngsters didn't have what it takes to survive in this world, and he would show them why he survived for so long, as he wasn't the oldest of the 5 Kages for nothing. It would take a while to gather such private information, but during that time he would just conquer the smaller and unprotected villages before making a direct and blunt approach to them or any other great nations. The war was still on its early stages, though even if Konoha has been winning battles after battles, everything could change in one night. Manipulating the Kazekage had been a good move by the Raikage. Yes, he knew what the Kumogakure's strongest wanted with that so-called temporary alliance. He would bet his entire village that if the battle for Nami had went the other way around, the Raikage was probably going to betray him and take the small country for himself. The proof of that was his appearance towards the end of the battle. Such small detail went probably unnoticed to everyone but not him. Though, it didn't matter anyway, only for future references really. Tsunagakure no Sato, Sakumo, Mikoto and Naruto gazed upon the village in the shadows. It was actually too easy to infiltrate Suna, easier than bypass the scouts stationed at the borders of Kaze no Kuni. Well, it was understandable, as it's only been a month and a week really since they had a good percentage of their army killed. Tsunagakure was basically unorganized. The higher-ups were probably having many debates if they should maintain their troops to protect the borders so they won't be seen as a village that had been very weakened after the battle for Nami no Kuni, or if they should just recall their shinobis and focus on protecting the village. There were many pros and cons with this. If they went with the former, they would be weakening the village, being way more vulnerable to spies, in case they got through their borders undetected. If they choose the latter though, it would have a large negative impact not just on the population's moral, but financially. The Kaze's daimyo would immediately take notice of the lower protection over his country, and as soon as he had put the pieces together, he would instantly cut financing Tsunagakure, and that would be catastrophic as any village needs financial support during a war. Troublesome times, indeed. It's been almost 4 days since the trio infiltrated the village. Soon they gathered many vital information, ranging from military to financial. They could see how the villagers, both civilians and shinobis, knew that Suna was way behind everyone because of their defeat over a month ago. They took a huge blow and they knew that shinobis were tense as what they called their weapon been extremely different since that battle. The Suna's Jinchuriki had suddenly become a pacifist of some sorts, the completely opposite of the bloodthirsty man they had come to know. Unknown to the group, Naruto knew the real reason for that drastic change, but he wouldn't tell them for now. It was still too soon for the world to know about his personal plans about the bijus. At the moment, Naruto was using his sensory abilities so the mission could go as they planned. They didn't want to take any chances as they had no illusions that they could take on an entire village, even if said village was weakened and in a disarray. It was his mission to assassinate the Kazekage, Kaziryu, while Mikoto and Tsukumo distracted the likes of Anbu and other nuisances that could put a dent in their plans. The Uchiha and Hatake clan members weren't preoccupied if someone saw them, as that too was one of the plans. The cloud symbol embedded on their headband shined brightly on their forehead. They were using a high level of henge combined with a powerful genjutsu. Only someone like the Kazekage, the Jinchuriki, or a high-class sensor would take notice of the almost imperceptible double-layer genjutsu surrounding them. Suddenly, one of his eyes twitched. Dark red eyes instantly snapped open and narrowed at the small signature of chakra flying towards Kazekage's office. Everyone would pass that as a normal bird that was used to deliver reports, urgent requests and the likes, but not Naruto. Let it be said that Naruto has recorded every single signature he has ever felt, in his mind, and that black-colored bird was an exception. The coloration was a dead giveaway as well. If he wasn't such an adept sensor he would most probably miss the animal, but that wasn't to be. His mind was already racing through the implications and the meaning of this. He couldn't contact Mikoto nor Tsukumo, who had already left to accomplish their individual missions. There's no mistake about it, that's one of the Uchiha's Kuchiyos. Summonings are a rare thing in the world. There's many high-caliber shinobis who are not blessed with such lifetime partners. It's very hard to come upon one. There's a double-edged way to find one, via using the respective hand seals and check which animal you're aligned to, but that can have drastic consequences, and if you're really not destined to have any summon, you'll be stuck in some random realm and eventually die. That's why no one uses that method. The most common was if your family had a summon as their protector, legacy, or heirloom. The Uchihos were and are a powerful clan coming from the Warring States period, and so it isn't that surprising that they held such vast amount of wealth, and of course, there was 2 or 3 families inside the Uchiha clan that had got their hands on some random contract. Uchiha Kagami was known for his crows, for example. The crow's summoning contract was always passed upon to the heir of the clan since the old days, but that was a sparrow. The sparrow's contract were known, in Konoha, to be used only by one of the branch families of the Uchiha clan. Oh? So there's someone trying to overthrow the current Uchiha's head by killing the heiress. It seems I'll have quite a talk with Kagami-sama. The question is, how could have someone get the knowledge of this mission? It was a secret not even known to the council. Was someone in the room while the Hokage was debriefing us about the mission? No, I would have sensed it. Not even someone from Root could hid from me, or Hokages for that matter, so that meant Mikoto or Tsukumo. The latter was very doubtful as he didn't disclose such type of informations with his wife, who was taking care of their newborn son, Kakashi, to not make her worried. However, Mikoto, being the heiress, could mean that she spoke with her father before the mission and someone overheard. That confirms it that indeed someone is trying to take over the Uchiha clan. Naruto snapped out of his thoughts as the same small signature vanished, probably by Gyakukuchios. But what was more confusing was that the Kazekage was moving towards a different location quite fast, before stopping, after a few minutes. An isolated area? So that means he's challenging whoever wants to assassinate him. Naruto's lips twitched into a grin, a certain glint in his eyes at the prospect of a worthy dance with the Kage. At least no one was around, and as soon as he gets too flashy, Kazekage would be already dead and Naruto on his way towards the rendezvous point when his little troops were to arrive. Meanwhile, Konohagaku no Sato, Uchiha's compound. Many would say that seeing Fugaku smiling was a very rare sight. Well, and they were right. To Fugaku, no one was worthy enough to see him smile. Simple as that. Not even the Uchiha clan. Not the current Uchihas. Fugaku was a teenager that came from a line of Uchihas that had always despised the Senjus, that always shared the belief on the Sharingan users being the superiors and, in the end, making the worst mistake by accepting an alliance with their rivals, a line that always shared Madara's beliefs. Though, history is always changing, everyone could distort something in a story, and even the smallest detail could make the difference in the end. No one, except a few, knew that Madara was the one to name Konohagakure. That the village was his dream along with Senju Hashirama. He had battled the Senjus mainly because of his brother, Izuna, who hated the Senjus because of his little brother's deaths. Even after Izuna dying, in the end, he accepted the alliance offered to him by Hashirama, and his childhood dream was finally achieved in form of Konohagakure no Sato. What changed were the rumors that the Uchihas were planning behind his back. His family wanted to go behind Uchiha Madara's back. After everything he had done for them, the countless battles, after surpassing the curse of hatred after the death of his most precious person, his brother, and finally getting the stability and long-sought peace for the clan they were plotting behind his back. One thing led to another, and he deserted the village, his family. For revenge? Yes. Against Senju Tobirama or Konoha as whole? No. Oh no, he only came back years later to put an end to the Uchiha clan. A clan that was his family. A family that was going to betray him if he had stayed a little longer. The story says that it was for another reasons, like he wanted the Hokage's title and that he had become paranoid because he lost once again against his bitter rival Hashirama. Tobirama's views on the Uchihos were not wrong, in Madara's opinions, even if the former thought that the gunbai user was the culprit behind everything. Madara came back for revenge, but that was not to be as Hashirama, too, grew in strength and defeated him on their final dance. But as the narrator said, history could be a set of lies agreed upon, so it wasn't a surprise that Fugaku thought he was doing a noble thing, worth of Madara's praise. The fact that the renegade and deceased Uchiha was the strongest and only equal to Senju Hashirama was a bonus. Fugaku saw that as the right mindset for power. He would be the Uchiha's head and carry on the legacy of his ancestor, and bring them back to the top once again. It disgusted him being around a clan full of weaklings. Everyone wanted to protect the village, forgetting how the clan was once feared all over the elemental nations, forgetting how they were at the top of the foods chain and forgetting that everyone once upon a time bowed when in their presence. Fugaku's original plan was to make contact with the heiress, Uchiha Mikoto, and eventually he would take the head roles so the woman could take care of their future child. But that wasn't to be, because of the appearance of a Senju. His eyes burned, a pair of blood-red three-tomoed eyes gazed at distance with fury just thinking about the latter. The prowess that the damned Senju showed in the early stages of this war left the Uchiha infuriated. Not just that, but that sack of bones of Hokage would always send him into vital missions, increasing his reputation among the villagers even more. It wasn't really surprising that everyone already worshipped the ground he walked on. Fugaku seethed. Everywhere he went, the damn brat, and Naruto is a year younger XD, would come to the conversation. It should be him, Fugaku, who should have been in the village's mind. It should be him, who they worship. But the last nail was when the young Uchiha saw the glances the heiress sent to the Senju. Their closeness was something that made him finally snap and starting to plot to take his clan by force. So, it was by coincidence when he was heading towards a training ground and watched Mikoto urgently entering her and her father's house that he came upon the conversation about a top-secret mission. His mind had immediately twisted and formed an evil plan. And now, here he was, hearing the confirmation of his little summon that he had successfully delivered the letter to the Kazekage without any difficulties. With the heiress's death and with the Kageme's inability to produce another heir, Fugaku would be the best candidate for the role as he was, by far, the strongest of this Uchiha's generation, only surpassed by Mikoto. Last but not least, the Senju would be dead by the end of the day. Suna no Shima. Kazuryu, only known wielder of Setetsu, the Iron Sand, a man in his mid-30s, was someone that wasn't meant to be a Kage. He had the skills and talent, but he lacked the right mentality to manage a village. He didn't mind being a commander, but a Kage was a different story. He didn't like politics and his decisions were only reasonable when it came to battles. He was a battle strategist, praised by his father, the knight-aimed Kazekage. Although he had his share bit of cunning, he knew how easily manipulated he could be, and that was one of the reasons that he didn't want to be a Kage. He didn't have the ability to play with words like others, Sarutobi and Inoki, and didn't have the heart nor the right achievements to rule his village with an iron fist like a. It was rare case for a prodigy to be born in Sunagakure. A genius of a specific type, however, was more common. Like himself, he was a battle-oriented genius. He didn't have any doubts that he would be dead if that unknown message hadn't reached him in time. He was kinda surprised actually that Konoha had such type of people walking in their midst. Being the type of man he is, immediately went to action and instead of bringing his guards, left the office and went towards what he calls the Suna Island, a few miles from Sunagakure, where he used to train with his father. Many years ago, this island was used to battle a chibi before it could reach the village. Kazuryu spoke out loud to no one in particular. His arms were crossed over his chest while gazing at the clear sky, with a faraway look. It will also be known as the Kazekage's grave. In a few minutes, a few meters away from the Kazekage, at a certain spot, the wind seemed to pick up the speed as a small tornado took shape. It took but a second to materialize itself into a known figure that Kazekage met recently. Senju Naruto, huh? The figure narrowed his now visible dark red eyes. It seems I was correct about that little bird. He was indeed waiting for me. The Senju heir didn't move an inch as the man in front of him continued. There was a reason for that. To battle a being such as the Ichibi here. Naruto's eyes widened slightly as a wave of iron sand materialized from the sandy ground beneath them. The fact that it took little less than 2 seconds to form was what astonished him. There's no one around, nothing to make us hold back. Setetsu Renzen. Iron sand, mountain range. Naruto's body moved on its own, purely on instinct, as many iron spears came out of the wall of iron sand, impaling the ground where he stood just a second ago. Satetsuso, iron sand spear. His right hand blurred through a small chain of hand seals before thrusting it on the ground as an electrical discharge exploded out of his hand towards the sand's wall, using the ground as medium. Raitan, Denko Noroshi. Lightning release. Lightning signal fire, zwapop. The electrical discharge instantly destabilized the wall, making it disperse into puddles of iron sand on the ground. His left hand was already finishing its own sequence. Suetun, Suryasho, water release, Azure Dragon Palm. Thrusting his hand forward, a jet of water materialized out of his hand, its tip taking shape of a dragon head, before it smashed against the unmoving form of the Kazekage, who had already made a single hand seal as the same puddles of iron sand protected his body in the form of a ball. Setetsu no Kabe, iron sand wall. Kazuriya missed his opponent's smirk as not sooner as the jet of water smashed against the wall, the iron sand immediately cracked under the pressure, making the current Kazekage eyes widen slightly. The dragon-headed jet had combined with the electricity still running through the iron sand from the previous encounter, which the Kazekages had not taken into account, cracking it as soon as it smashed against the wall. Kazuri gritted his teeth in pain as the water plus electricity washed over him after sending himself a few meters backwards from sheer force of it. Such high affinity towards Raitun and Suetun, he doesn't even need to spell the jutsu out loud, and let's not forget about the single hand seals. I'm at disadvantage even if the playing field is my home. I've got to keep my distance. Then, iron sand sprout out of his back. A pair of black wings immediately took shape, making Naruto's eyes narrow. They flapped violently downwards, taking the Kazekage into the air. Setetsu no Tsubasa, iron sand wings. Naruto's mind raced through many plans as he watched those troublesome wings making his opponent unreachable. I can't make a direct approach if he's in the air. There's also iron sand everywhere on the ground. It would be a mistake attacking head-on. He was snapped OU of his thoughts as from those black wings, thousands of iron needles materialized out of it before it rained upon him. Setetsu no Haritatsujiko, iron sand needles assault. Naruto's hands blurred through many hand seals as he gritted his teeth at the chakra input. Making use of the puddles of water made by the previous jet, it took shape of a wall before freezing itself into a wall of ice. The high temperature in the area making it hard to sustain and form such technique, the proof being the small sweat forming in Naruto's forehead. Hayatan, Suesho Hiki. Ice release, crystal wall. Naruto sighed in relief as he heard the sound of the needles impacting against the wall, the latter not budging a bit before his eyes widened as he felt his legs being enveloped in iron sand. So, his plan was to make myself distracted with the needles coming from the air, while he moved the iron sand that was still on the ground. Not bad. It's over. Setetsu, iron sand coffin. Naruto closed his eyes. Sparks of electricity started to dance around his body as the iron sand started to envelope his entire body, almost reaching his face. Setetsu SOS. Raitun, Shurden Nagashi, lightning release, purple lightning current. A shower of purple lightning exploded out of Naruto's body, immediately burning the sand all around him to nothing, the ice wall cracking as soon as the same lightning current made contact with it, dark red eyes narrowing at widened green eyes. Naruto moved his hand upwards, palm open towards the Kazekage's flying figure. A current purplish lightning materialized in front of it before being lunged into his opponent. Raitun Reishinsen, lightning release, thunderbolt flash. Its speed being completely different from the Raitun previously used, catching the Kazekage off guard, who only had time to put up a simple wall of iron sand, thought it was not enough as it was simply decimated before his whole body went numb, instantly falling to one knee. Naruto released a few deep breaths as the purple lightning that covered his body dissipated, gazing upon the falling form of his opponent. He started to walk towards the Setetsu wielder, his hearers picking up the weak and rasped voice of the same person. ICIW was INDD to be bad and match up against Yoyu. The Senju didn't stop walking towards him as his impassive face watched with some amusement the soon-to-be Death Kage. He scoffed inwardly. Of course you were at disadvantage, fool. Konoha wouldn't send someone who couldn't nullify such dangerous Kekai Genkai. I was the best option, seeing I could assassinate him easily with the help of my sensory abilities, or, in case of something went wrong, I had enough skills to come out victorious without taking too much time. The sound of lightning roaring to life made Kazuriya tilt his head upwards, just in time to see the infamous Raijin no Ken descending upon him. I leave the village in your hands, Sabaka no Raza. Naruto impaled the Senju's artifact, slightly surprised as the Kazekage didn't even try to do something on his last breath. His sensory abilities picked up on many signatures coming towards his location. The chakra he had released was probably felt by everyone in the village, and that giant iron sand wall at the beginning was prone to attract some attention. His body shimmered out of existence after sealing the now-deceased Sandaime Kazekage's head in one of his sealing scrolls. He would have sealed the body, but it was burnt beyond anything else, making it impossible to make any type of experiments, or to try and find its secrets. Naruto would leave the almost unidentifiable body alone. It would be just a glimpse on what was about to be unleashed into the world.